Good morning, everyone. Welcome to a meeting of the Electoral Area Services Committee for Monday, July 13th, 2026. I want to welcome the gallery here. It's a substantial gallery today, and just to remind you of a few housekeeping items. Should there be an emergency, we have exits where you came in, as well as 2 on the side door, and if need be, even around back. Our muster point will be the sidewalk outside on Harmston, if we ever have to use it. Heaven forbid. If you have to use washrooms, they are down the hallway on your right, and they're all automatic, so you have to follow instructions very carefully. It only takes about 5 minutes to get in and out. But that being said, we're ready to start everything off in a good way here. Land acknowledgement, of course, the Comox First Nations, who are doing our business here on the traditional territory of the First Nations, and we're very privileged to be here as always, and to have such great partners in the Comox Valley. We had a delegation lined up, but unfortunately the fellow took ill, so we're going to jump the gun here, and I'm going to ask the board to receive a late delegation from Curtis Scoville regarding the Saratoga Beach Local Area Plan. If I could get a motion.
Yeah, I'll move.
Okay. And I'll second. So if Curtis would like to come up and approach the podium, press the little button on the microphone, and we have a PowerPoint loaded as well. No, we don't. Okay.
Sorry, I'm not that entertaining having a PowerPoint with me.
Welcome, Curtis.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, I've lived in Saratoga, Miracle Beach for the past 21 years. Was involved for most of that time with the Residents Association there. Also the Area Planning Commission. I was actually involved before the APC structure was introduced. So I was involved with Barry Miniker's communications group before that. I've served as Barry Miniker's alternate director and Edwin Greaves' alternate director on and off. And whenever I wasn't doing that, I was also a member of the APC. Involved with several stewardship groups, mostly centered around the Oyster River and the Solom River, and now more so focused on things like children's camps on the North Island and stuff like that. I want to start by just saying, because it's not here in my notes, that I very much appreciate all the work that's gone into the local area plan draft. Since I moved here 21 years ago, we've been talking about updating and ratifying a local area plan for our community, so we appreciate that. I'm going to stick to my notes from this point onwards so that I don't go over time. I'd like to note that I've attached a copy of some information that I sent to the electoral area directors with regard to the reports that I've mentioned in my notes here. I'll preface these comments by noting that I understand that the local area plan is a policy framing document. It's not a detailed action plan with details of resolving particular problems. So I'm not expecting detailed solutions from this document, but I do have some concerns. Growth in the Saratoga Beach settlement node was limited primarily by water supply for over 20 years. Water metering and expanding capacity of the Black Creek Oyster Bay Water Service have largely mitigated that risk. Growth is now limited primarily by septic system limitations and high groundwater concerns. This was most recently documented in the 2015 groundwater study and associated CVRD staff report in 2016. In 2005, the sewer proposal was rightly voted down. It was a referendum because over 2/3 of the community did not need it or want it. To understand the claims made to support the 2026 local area plan, it's important to clarify that the 2005 referendum proposed a sewer service that was large enough to encompass the entire settlement node and beyond along Seaview Road and south along Highway 19A. The 2015 groundwater study observed that the focus of the public health crisis is limited to about 20% of the community in the high-density Saratoga Beach area, and concluded that a settlement node-wide sewer solution was both unnecessary and likely to be rejected again, as it was in 2005. Unfortunately, the 2026 local area plan open house materials prominently disqualify a public sewer service based on what was offered as about a $70 million cost. But that refers to the larger settlement node wide service that was rejected in the 2005 referendum. The local area plan materials completely ignore a more limited public solution. I know that the staff are aware of these options, but I'm just referring to the document and particularly the materials presented at the open house. The 2015 groundwater study did not recommend a settlement node-wide service. It recommended a limited public sewer service serving only the area where over 50% of the test wells are failing public health and environmental protection regulations. I'll note that a failure rate over 25% is considered a crisis. So when I refer to this as a crisis with over 50% of those test wells failing, I'm not exaggerating. Point number 8, in the 2015 groundwater study suggested that the essential ingredient for a limited public sewer solution would be a partnership with a relatively larger, by larger I mean larger than individual dwellings, residential development close to the problem area. And we've had two such developers attempting to fulfill this role over the past 20 years. Now, I've followed that issue for a long time, so I know how complicated it is and how challenging it is. So I don't want to oversimplify it like the solution was just sitting there, but the public needs to understand the importance of that property relative to a potential sewer solution, and I don't think that they do. Since the 2005 sewer referendum, the community has watched two willing developers offer exactly the partnership required to address the public health crisis. This crisis will be very difficult to address if we follow the path laid out in the current local area plan. I say difficult, not impossible. Expecting individual property owners in the problem area to solve the larger problem sets the stage for a game of cat and mouse, where owners seek to defer the cost and avoid compliance. The current LAP may well prove to be the default path forward, but there are significant pieces of the puzzle that have not been adequately discussed with those most affected. This local area plan will most likely force individual property owners to replace their failing septic systems with raised sandbank style sewer septic systems that will dramatically impact the appearance and value of their properties. These same property owners are also faced with the costs associated with the integration of the private Watuutko water service into the public Black Creek Oyster Bay water service. And I'm not even counting other infrastructure related upgrade costs that are going to be facing this same community. The no community sewer policy should be clarified to say that there cannot be a settlement node wide service like the one voted down in 2005. If the limited public service that is recommended in the 2015 groundwater study is also not feasible, then those reasons should be communicated separately and more clearly. This local area plan is understandably loaded with aspirational language about aligning, encouraging, strengthening, monitoring, and considering. But we have an existing public health and environmental problem that's been growing for decades and will most likely get worse in the coming decades without an urgent public response and reliable cooperation. We have a suitable property closely located to the problem area and a current owner of that property with considerable resources and expertise to negotiate in good faith for a mutually beneficial solution that develops the property within the low growth parameters described in this LAP. The public-private collaboration espoused by this LAP aligns with the opportunity for a limited public sewer solution for the new development and the problem area. If we don't seize this opportunity while the adjacent property remains undeveloped, this opportunity will be lost forever. It's apparent to those of us who've been following this problem for 20 years that the new local area plan and the 2015 groundwater study taken together point to an urgent need for a coordinated liquid waste management plan for Saratoga Beach that focuses on the problem area. The strategic connections between the local area plan, a liquid waste management plan, and a limited public sewer service have not been adequately communicated to our residents, especially the property owners faced with the combined impact, and by that I mean also costs, of the water service integration and septic replacements on their properties. I recommend that these subjects be front and center at the next open house, and that the urgent need for a liquid waste management plan be better articulated. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Scoville. Any questions from the directors?
Thank you.
Seeing none. I thank you very much for your presentation, and I think the directors are taking it under consideration. I think you're quite correct in the fact that the bus doesn't come and stop every 15 minutes. Neither does the sewer solution. So, you know, we have to actually be open and nimble and be able to seize the opportunities rather than kick them down the road another 10 years. That's my personal feeling. But thank you for bringing that forward. We're going to move on to the rest of the meeting now. We have the resolution and status report for receipt.
So moved.
Second.
Moving second receipt. Is there any discussion on that? Director, did you?
Nope.
Nothing, okay. So then, anyone opposed to the receipt? Seeing none, it carries. Electoral Area A, temporary use permit application 3884A, Warren Avenue, a report for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moving second on receipt, and over to staff for introductions.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Pleased to introduce Odessa Cohen, our senior planner, who will be introducing the staff report on the temporary use permit. Odessa, over to you.
Great. Thank you so much. Good morning. So for today, I have the application for a TUP for 3884A Warren Road. The owners and applicant, Sylvia Mossy, is here at the table in order to answer any questions that the committee may have. So on June 15th, staff provided a report to the Electoral Area Services Committee with a recommendation for refusal for a tourist accommodation in a principal dwelling with an accessory long-term residential use in the carriage house on the same parcel. The committee requested staff bring back a draft TUP to permit the tourist accommodation within the principal dwelling for 1 year. This draft is an attachment that forms part of the staff report presented today. As part of the application to provide the 1 year term, staff went and circulated this request to adjacent properties within 100 meters of the subject parcel, and this was mailed out on June 25th, 2026. Since that time, 4 letters in opposition have been received, in addition to 2 letters of support as of July 10th. Staff continue to recommend refusal for this application for the following reasons. The short-term rental proposed is located within the principal dwelling with no residential component, resulting in a principal commercial use on the property, which contravenes the intent of the R1 zone. The applicant is proposing an established long-term residential use in the accessory dwelling, resulting in a secondary residential use, and again, does not align with the purpose and intent of the R1 zone. And the proposal of a principal commercial use on a residential property does not align with the OCP housing objectives or the findings of the 2024 housing needs assessment. If the committee would like to proceed with approval of the drafted TUP permit that is attached, a motion has been provided by staff in the executive summary of the staff report. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is the applicant here? And do you wish to speak? Okay, just press the button there and state your name.
Sylvia Mossy. So I spoke with you about a month ago. Wanted to start with just saying after the last meeting, I did walk around to our neighbors. We've got a lot of turnover recently, so I wanted to ensure that especially all of our neighbors had our contact information and to let them know what had happened at the last EASC, because there was some confusion with them providing feedback when staff had changed to refusal. We've looked over the draft and we have absolutely no issues with the conditions. We greatly appreciate the committee's intent in recommending the shorter permit. The one thing is that we would respectfully request an expiration date at the end of the calendar year instead of specifically one year. We feel this would best achieve the objective discussed at the last meeting, which was giving the CVRD enough time to develop and implement clear short-term rental policies. In some of the correspondence and in some of the neighbors I spoke with as well, that was a main thing, is that they felt that they would be in support of a shorter term TUP, with the idea that there would be clear policy from the CVRD by the time the TUP was done. If the permit is granted specifically for 1 year today, it would expire in July of 2027. In practice, we would need to apply for renewal approximately 6 months earlier, which would be around January 2027. Local elections are taking place this fall, plus the time required for public consultation, policy development, staff analysis, and board consideration. It seems unlikely that a comprehensive review of short-term rental policies would be completed before renewal comes back before the board. As a result, we could find ourselves applying to renew under the same uncertain policy framework that this TUP is intended to provide the time to address. Expiring the permit on December 31st, 2027 would create a more realistic timeline for the policy review process and allow a future renewal, if it is even permitted under the new policy, to be considered with clear and updated CVRD direction. I know Director Arbour has said that this is a topic that has been going on for many years over in the islands, specifically Hornby. It's not a simple topic. It's a very contentious topic, we know. And we see there are municipalities and regional districts that are doing various different methods of dealing with these. We've seen many in Victoria that are doing a number of calendar days per year, as opposed to trying to encourage those carriage houses and suites, as opposed to simply just encouraging those, which I know I spoke at length last time, that I feel those are the ones that we need as the long-term rentals. But again, my main here is just we would request, if you are in favor, to have a end of year expiry date. It would also give greater certainty for ourselves and our guests. As you can guess, that families, temporary workers, and other visitors to the area for big events like Snow to Surf and the different racing events that we have, they make their travel plans many months in advance. So an expiration date right in the middle of the summer of the busy tourism season it just creates a lot of uncertainty for everyone involved and can just shorten our horizon long before the permit would actually expire. We just, again, believe that this approach of an end of calendar year would serve both the CVRD and our own family well by ensuring that future decisions are made with the benefit of policy clarity that this temporary use permit is specifically intended to allow. So, thank you for your time and consideration.
And thank you for very eloquently stating your case. I'll turn it over to questions from the directors, and Director Arbour has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And more observation. I think it's good to see some support. There's still some concerns with some of the residents that we've received, but it was good to see other letters as well come in recognition of the support. And interestingly, I had the same thought as the applicant regarding the timing, like July to July. I was going to speak to that today is somewhat awkward, but I'll have to ask the staff what would be involved with potentially having it to year end. At first, I was thinking to the end of September, but I could be accommodating to year end as per the request. I would also note, just more generally speaking, that where in regards to the overall policy, who knows? I think there'll be post-election. I think the applicant is right. There'll be new elected officials. They would have to prioritize this project and move forward with it. So we'll see what happens in the future. It could end up that what we currently have ends up sticking, which is just that temporary use permit process. But I would also note, I don't think we have the benefit of. There used to be, I think, a Comox Valley Short-Term Rental Association, like when I started 10 years ago. I'm not sure that that's still active. So it's going to be interesting to see how we try to engage with the sector should we pursue that initiative. But for today, this is just for this TUP, and I would like to hear from staff if the request for an end of year could be accommodated.
Lana?
Good morning. Through the chair to the directors, you can do that. So we've provided you with a draft temporary use permit. And so this request would require you to lengthen the term that's contemplated in the permit. So I think it's a fairly simple change that you could make.
Okay, thanks. I'll wait to hear from other directors, and otherwise I'd be prepared to move that.
Any of the directors with other questions? Comments? I have one question, and that would be, I know we've kicked this around for a while, but what would be an estimated timeline for reviewing the TUP regulations in the Comox Valley? We talked about maybe bringing in business licenses and such to control it like they do in the cities. So is there anything on the work plan? I was trying to see the work plan there in a hurry, but Alana?
Through the chair to the directors, we have a piece of work pending within our tourism service, which is an accommodation study. And that's really been the piece that we've been waiting for to inform this work. But if we need to go ahead of that work, that would be okay too. That would be a public engagement that we would initiate under direction from the board. Probably first, second quarter, we could initiate that work and do. I think really this project is about what our public is looking for. And we know that they're looking for very different things in different places. And that's largely why the TUP has served, I think, fairly well to this date in understanding that specific neighborhoods have really different interests.
Well, yes, there appears to be no end to applications coming forward. So about the second quarter of next year would be reasonable. Director Arbor, some more comments?
No, that's good to know, and yeah, I'll just see if Dr. Hardy has anything else, and otherwise I'd be prepared to propose it what Alana just suggested.
Director Hardy?
Yeah, I don't have any comments right now, Director Arbor.
So I see this is just for receipt. So before we get to, we have to receive the report. And then we have to receive the correspondence attached to it. So on receipt of the report, anybody opposed? That carries. And we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 comments for receipt. Want to move that, Director?
Yeah, I'll move.
I'll second it. Okay. So once again, anybody opposed? Don't see any. That carries. Director Hardy, do you have a comment? Okay. Yeah, next brings me to the gallery. Is anybody in the gallery wishing to speak to this matter? I'll ask for the first time, second time, third and final time. I see none. And there's no addendum. So we're good. So Director Arbor,
Yeah,
you have
thanks.
something to put forward?
Yeah, I'd move that we move forward the TUP to December 31st, 2027. And if that's supported, I'll speak on my rationale.
I'll second.
Director Hardy, okay. So that's, can't turn you off. That, according to the recommendations, do we have those in the minutes? Just to be clear. That the application for a temporary use permit, TUP 1A26, for term to end 2027 to allow tourist accommodation as the primary use of the property at 3884A Warren Avenue, legally described as et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, be approved. Moved by Daniel Arbor, Richard Hardy second. Any further discussion?
Yes, Chair.
Director Arbor?
Yeah, just for the record, I think it's fine. Like we had contemplated a 12-month turnaround, but it is true, like mid-July, by then the summer season is already underway. And usually it starts to peter off in September anyways. And I do agree that we might start to see some policy come up around that time. So I know it's not going to be popular with everyone, but at the same time, it's not going into another season the following year. So I'm in favor of that timeline.
You never know, the minions in Victoria might be working away at this as we speak. I'd like to excuse you from the table. We're going to take a vote now. So thank you very much for your presentation. So on the actual recommendation, anybody opposed? Then that carries. Thank you very much. 3, Electoral Area C, the Agricultural Land Reserve application ALR 1C for 268282 Island Highway. Report for receipt.
Move receipt.
Moving seconded over to staff introductions.
Great. Thank you very much, Chair. And I'm pleased to introduce Sophia Barr, our Planner 1, who will be introducing the staff report. Sophia, I believe this is your first Electoral Area Services Committee meeting, so welcome. And of course, Alana Mullally, General Manager of Planning and Development Services, is attending as well. So, Sophia.
Welcome.
Thank you. Through the CAO to the chair and committee, if the applicants are here and available, I'd like to invite Ian Slater and Christy Shambrook to the table. And Don Cameron. Yeah. Okay, so staff received an Agricultural Land Commission application regarding the extraction and placement of fill on a residential lot in Black Creek. The applicant proposes to construct an addition to an existing detached shop. The proposed works include soil extraction and fill placement on lands within the Agricultural Land Reserve. The subject site is 0.65 hectares in size and no agricultural use is underway, and the parcel does not have farm status. The owners propose to construct a 36 square meter addition to the front of the accessory building over top an existing driveway. The amount of soil to be removed and fill to be added would cover an area of approximately 37 square meters. In accordance with the ALR regulations, the owners submitted a notice of intent to the ALC. The notice of intent application was declined, and ALC staff recommended a non-farm use application be submitted to the Comox Valley Regional District. The proposed addition of the shop is in alignment with ALC and Comox Valley Regional District policies, which promote clustering of buildings and structures in the ALR to prevent the reduction and fragmentation of farmable land. At the April 9th, 2026 Agricultural Advisory Planning Commission meeting, the commission recommended this application be forwarded to the Agricultural Land Commission for the following reasons. The subject property is small in size, residential in use, and not suitable for agricultural use. And the addition to the shop offers minimal disturbance to the property, and the space will be used to restore a historically significant military aircraft. Staff recommend this application be forwarded to the ALC for decision, as the proposal is consistent with CVRD policies and has no impact on the agricultural potential of the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the applicant wish to speak. Just press the little button in front there, your microphone. State your name.
My name is Ian Slater. I'm the owner of the subject property. As I think that was an excellent presentation. It's been a little bit frustrating for me to see this process roll out, but it sounds like everybody's had positive things to say about what we're doing there. As mentioned, the purpose of this is to extend an existing shop that is purpose-built for the restoration of a Second World War Canadian fighter bomber. We've run out of space and we'd like to proceed, and it's not going to touch any native soil. That area has already been excavated once. If anything, I mean, up to the contractors, it's going to basically get scraped on that area. It's already compacted pit run. I don't see any intrusion on agricultural land by doing this. Just to follow up with the project, we're currently not for profit and seeking charitable status for this project as well. I understand that you've got to look at it from a point of resale of the property, but there's no intent of that at all. We're proceeding just to make enough space to get this project done and represent Canadian military from the Second World War.
So you mentioned you're not for profit.
We've just registered as a not-for-profit society, Typhoon Legacy Society, and we're just going through the process of converting over to that incorporation for the future of this project.
Sounds very interesting.
I could talk about it all day if you'd like.
I'm asking if the directors have any questions for the applicant or staff at this point. I'm seeing none. I will excuse from the table now while we take a vote on receipt. Thank you. So on the receipt of the report, anybody opposed? I see none. That carries. And there's a recommendation attached if somebody wants to move it.
Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Move a second on the report. Any further comments, questions of staff? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Anybody opposed to the recommendation? Seeing none, that carries. Thank you very much. Number 4, still in electoral area C, commercial and industrial form and character development permit DP7B26 for 2084 Saratoga Road. A report for receipt right off the bat. Moved on receipt and seconded. And over to Alana.
Yes, Alana will be introducing this one in place of Carter Ruff, our planner 1. So Alana.
Thanks very much, James. Through the chair to the CAO, I'll just note, although the correct recommendation, the file is referenced on the heading number 4, we've made an error. It's DP7C26. I believe we've got the applicant online, Erin McCutcheon, and possibly Scott Peltier and Nicholas Booth, in the audience. No, Erin online. This application is a development permit for commercial use, a new tourist commercial use in Saratoga. The applicants are proposing a 45 RV pad tourist accommodation campground. This file, was presented to the APC earlier this month, and recommendations were provided to the applicant around lighting, access, questions around trail access to the beach, internal connectivity, and general site design. Generally, the application conforms with the intent and the guidelines that are within the OCP. Each of the pads meets our minimum requirement for size. There is two septic systems. There are two septic systems proposed, a primary and a backup, and the site is connected to the Black Creek Oyster Bay water system. There is a network internally of asphalt, roadway, and pathways. And there is a proposed stormwater retention facility. There is a water course adjacent to this property within the right-of-way, but no works are proposed within that area, within the development permit area. Part of the property is within the floodplain, and all buildings are proposed to be outside of the floodplain. Specifically, the buildings proposed are a new washroom facility and laundry facility. The applicants are also considering installation of an in-ground pool and then open lawn areas for patron use. One of the questions that the APC did raise was about access. There is a commercial access permit to Saratoga Road. We sent the site plan to the ministry and suggested that they consider a review of the shoulder widths and the shoulder treatment in that area, noting that there will be folks wanting to leave this site, presumably, and accessing the beach within that right-of-way. There's no trail access provided. There was a reference to a trail access provided through the adjacent property at Pacific Playgrounds, and that is not part of this application at all. That would be with the owners to resolve. That's not something that staff are weighing in on, nor can approve. I think for our side, that's everything I'd like to flag, and then certainly if the applicant has anything that she wishes to add.
Thanks very much. And on Zoom, we have Aaron. You want to make some comments? The proponent have some comments to make to the...
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I appreciate being able to attend online today. I'm not able to be there in person just to some medical treatments I'm receiving in Vancouver. So I appreciate still being able to speak to the application. This application, I feel, was well thought out. We very much considered site constraints in the localized community. I also own a house very local to this site and live in the local area. I wanted to present something that was thoughtful, was considerate, and it fit with the reasons why I personally love the community so much. Not only do I own the golf course, but I'm obviously the acting partner in terms of development. We have a good group of local partners that are really interested in putting something forward that the community can be proud of. And I think that we have taken the time and the consideration to put that together. I think we've also still, even in the pause between agendas, we have added in the remarks about the 3,000 Kelvin to our landscape plan to address that one comment. As far as interconnectivity on pathways, I did mention at the last meeting that we do actually have a connected pathway between Pacific Playgrounds and us that was gated for years and was opened up last summer so that people were able to move between the two sites. And there was some kind of symmetry between the two of them as well to make it more of a community. We also, on the golf course side, have a pathway that connects to the Miracle Beach Elementary School so that children are able to walk through and pass through that as well. So we do maintain and try to provide that connectivity through the local community as part of our on-site ability to do so. We did consult traffic as well in terms of, we do have a traffic consultant. We've used Bunt through the process of designing the site. They obviously have analyzed our internal road networking and accesses, and have reached out to MOTI as well with respect to their policies. The proposed accesses and emergency access don't represent any conflicts with traffic, and they are favorable. I think that we've addressed a lot of this through a few years of work and multiple consultants. We tried to put the best thing forward. And I hope that that's seen by the local community and by the panel as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I now ask if the directors have any questions of either the staff or the proponent. And Director Hardy.
Yeah, something that leaked out to me, and thank you for the comments from the proponent, was a commitment for a trail for kids to be able to get to Miracle Beach Elementary. I appreciate that. I'm just wondering if there's something that could be placed in writing with regards to, I know folks say we're committed to putting in a trail for kids so they can get to school today, but things change next year or 6 months from now, and then all of a sudden that access to that trail for the kids disappears. So I just wanted to make sure in the commitment that was put forward there, if we could get something in writing with regards to making sure that trail is available for the kids so they can get to school on a daily basis. Thanks.
Darren, you have a comment
Yeah,
there at all?
yeah, sorry. Yes, actually, the trail already does exist. And it was actually spoken to as part of Saratoga Speedway's public hearing. That was one of the comments that was addressed through that public hearing, as well as about networking and access. I'm not sure why our property was talked about in terms of that application, but we have had that trail open for many years and we maintain it constantly. It's just something that we've always done for the local community since we've owned it. So the trail already actually does exist. If there was something you wanted to formulate in writing that says we would maintain and keep that trail, I don't see an issue with that at all. We would be happy to do so.
Absolutely perfect. Thank you. Any other directors with questions? No, not at this point. Well, I have a comment. As you probably know, MOTT is doing some resurfacing on the roads in Saratoga Beach. Believe it or not, after 20 years of talking about it, it's going ahead this summer. This would be a prime time, I think, for the property owner to approach them insofar as accommodating as much as possible some active transportation, pedestrian, cycling, or whatever along. It would be Regent Road, wouldn't it? Right to the corner there. I mean, that one corner is definitely one of the most dangerous corners, I think, in Area C. So I'm just wondering if you sharpen your pencil and write a letter to MOTT or schedule a meeting with them. I think you'll get favorable support from the regional district.
Yeah, absolutely. We'd be happy to. And actually, as a group, we discussed during the pause in council meetings, making a contribution to offsites potentially as well. We'd be happy to donate some money to MOTI to see if they were able to do some construction in that area. I know it's a little dodgy with who constructs and it being capital or part of a capital plan, but we would like to provide some form of cash in lieu if we're able to for them for future works if it's being considered as well. So we will definitely reach out to them and have a connection.
That sounds great. And as well as maybe some wine and roses to Saratoga or to Pacific Playgrounds as well, to see if we can keep that other access open, the trail access, which is really important. Director Arbor, I think, has a question. Director?
Yeah, thanks. Just a question that came up in my mind, just looking at the site plan. And this is, I don't have an issue with this application. It's good, but I do have that question whether the applicant has given consideration, say that if in time, if they wanted to move this into a prefab or mobile home park, whether the lots that they're cutting with these RVs, because I realize a lot of dollars are going into this, has that consideration been given at all? Or if not, that's fine. I'm just curious for the long term.
Sorry, if we consider doing like mobile home dwellings, like not RVs, you mean more prefab?
Yeah,
dwellings.
exactly. And the reason I ask is I just don't know if the size of the lots, if you found out later that they're just simply a little bit too small versus it could have been accommodated for, for a couple of decades from now, or whether, and if you haven't considered it, that's fine.
No, actually, we have considered it. We definitely looked at prefabrication of units and mobility and CSA requirements in terms of that. I mean, obviously, the zoning requires mobility. If it's an RV park, a lot of those prefabricated units do have a mobility type designation that allows them to work in this area now or on this specific type of development. I think in the general instance, we would try and service the needs of the local community. I think during the course of this application, we've seen economic conditions change and a need for greater housing. Seen a closure of a mobile home park as well for upgrades in Comox, and I've been paying close attention to that. I feel like this site has ability to help people potentially in a time of need where we're seeing housing needs adjusting with economic considerations. It is something we have looked at and would consider as more kind of a long-term plan. Once the site has been developed, obviously things take time to generate, but yeah, absolutely. It is something that we have considered that this could service more needs than just, a basic recreational visitor. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm really glad to hear that. Thank you for the additional information.
Any other directors with questions or comments? I'll make one comment. Aaron, we expect to see you at the open house of the local area plan on the 30th of July.
I'm going to do my absolute best to make it. I'm
sorry about
hoping
that.
my treatment should be wrapped up by then, so I should be there. I would love to be there. Thank you.
Well, best of luck at that.
Thank you so much.
Because I do think that that whole discussion of prefab and whatever will be something that's going to be coming out of that. Okay, so we don't see any other questions. I don't see any other lights. I'm going to call a question on receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. And recommendation attached. Moved by Director Hardy. I'll second it. Any discussion on the recommendation? I will make one comment. $614,000 is a lot of money for a landscape security deposit. They better come out looking like Butcher Gardens or something. Thanks. Okay, so on the actual recommendation, no more discussion. Call the question on that. Anybody opposed? Then that carries. Thank you also very much. Moving along, Electoral Area C Development Permit, Commercial Form and Character DP 1C26 for the unaddressed lot alongside Island Highway, Fairlane 500 Holdings. Move on report. I'll second the report. And over to staff again.
Thank you, Chair. Alan Mullally again will present this report on the proposed development permit. Alan.
Great. Thanks very much, James. And through the chair to the directors, we're still in Saratoga settlement node here. And this is a property that's located adjacent to the Saratoga Motorsports property. And to the east is the highway. I believe that the applicants may be in attendance. Jody is not here, so I'm looking randomly. Please come to the table. Thanks. Great. So while they're collecting themselves, this is an application for development permit under the commercial form and character guidelines and our official community plan. And the intention here of these guidelines is to provide for commercial and industrial opportunities and maintain a rural form and character. Joanne and Kent? No. Okay, so this is Jim Matthew, the designer for the owner, and Joanne Landolt, owner of the property. Great. So as I said, this property is located on a commercially zoned parcel between the Saratoga Motorsports property and the highway. The parcel has been cleared and is being redeveloped for the purpose of a restaurant, new construction of a restaurant building. The applicant has provided building drawings, site plans with landscaping, and a rainwater management plan. all of which meet the requirements of the guidelines. Their approach to the design of the building is to orient inwards to the site, sort of inwards towards the motorsports park. And the road frontage along the highway will be planted with riparian vegetation, which has been recommended by their qualified environmental professional. And again, that's within a freshwater development permit area. Additional landscaping is proposed around the parking lot and the building itself. The building is proposed in a monitor barn style and will have exterior metal cladding and timber posts and braces. And there's a prominent stone chimney. Yeah, so the draft development permit in Appendix A of your report includes the building design as proposed, the screening and the landscaping, as well as the rainwater management plan. And it's recommended that you approve the development permit because it is consistent with the guidelines. Mr. Chair, I have nothing further. Perhaps the applicants would like to say something.
Thank you very much. And we have proponents here. Joanne, do you wish to speak? Okay, just pull a little closer your mouth there. I'll turn you on there. You're on.
Oh, hello, my name is Joanne Landolt. Myself and my husband Kent own this property. We have decided to construct a tap house that would be a restaurant as well with a full kitchen. We've heard from many locals that there's a need for this type of establishment out there. And we are very, very excited to be able to have this opportunity to open the site. Like I said, we will have a full kitchen from pub fare to salads, that sort of thing, pizzas with a full beverage menu. We have an expansive indoor space, and we're going to be constructing a games room. So we can have it to be a local hub for the community. We're going to have some televisions as well, so being able to showcase some sporting events. We have a very large patio designed that is going to be a U-shape to enjoy all the seasons. As noted, we are going to have a inside/outside fireplace, which will be a focal point. Yeah, and like we said, we've heard from residents and also people that visit the area to be at Saratoga Racetrack Speedway, and also people that are visiting Saratoga Beach, the local area for tourism. A place for people to be able to not only have meals, but be able to have a community hub for the residents out in that area. Yeah, I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the directors? Director Hardy.
Question for the chair, maybe he might be able to help me out. This potential or future business wouldn't impact the Fisherman's Lodge at any time, would it? The Fisherman's Lodge? Haha.
Well, as an old timer, I remember there was the Hideaway up on Macaulay Road. There was the Fisherman's across the river there, which was a going concern going back to the days of Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, who used to fish offshore in their yacht and frequent the establishment. So now when the Salmon Point Pub, which burned down a couple of years ago, which is now an Italian restaurant. So, yeah, I guess my question is, do you get your birthday entree free? Just kidding. That's not a contingent on approval, I'll tell you. Very good. Dr. Arbor, any comments?
Yeah, thanks. I think it's a good application, and I'll be supporting it. And it's nice to see. I think that area has a lot of people living there, and I think we've talked in the past about the value of having more businesses and service providers in the area. So this really supports that. Thank you.
Well, thanks a lot. Yeah, I think this, as you say, this is something that's been lacking in my constituency for quite a while. One of the questions that came out of the APC, in fact, I think it was Curtis himself who's in the gallery here, was the ability to have a small meeting space for business lunches and such, you know, which seems to be lacking in our area. And I think it was something to do with having to, mobility stuff, having to have an elevator. Is that what I heard? Or if Joanne, you or Nick, you say, I'll turn you on.
There was earlier discussion about possibly doing a meeting space up on the second level. Currently, that second level doesn't exist except for a small office area. We didn't put that in yet, but it's still being considered. However, in the meantime, there is this games room that is planned as part of the restaurant space. It's somewhat separated, and it could function as a meeting space as well. So we've considered that option.
That's a good compromise. I like that. Thanks. Okay, so any other questions, comments of the proponents? Seeing none, I'll excuse from the table and we'll take a vote. So we're on receipt. Going to call the question on receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. And a recommendation attached. Moved by Director Hardy. I'll second it. Any more discussion? Seeing none on the recommendation. Anybody opposed? That carries. Thank you very much. Now, the moment you've all been waiting for. Electoral Area C application to amend the official community plan and zoning bylaws for the Puntledge Lands Development. Report for receipt. Seconded. And spoke to Alana again?
Yes, you bet. Lan Mullally, introducing this report for the Puntledge Lands Development.
Thanks very much, James. Through the chair to the directors, the owner's representative and agents are in attendance, and I'd like to invite them to come to the table, please, if they wish. Thanks. And this is Mark Holland. Okay. We've received an application to amend the official community plan to repeal a previous official community plan and amend zoning over 6 properties in Area C, approximately at the confluence of the Browns and Puntledge rivers. The properties amount to approximately 200 hectares and are undeveloped, mostly forested, other than a clearing with a forestry road on the western end. This application proposes the eventual subdivision to 4-hectare parcels and a development of a range of uses, including industrial, commercial, agricultural, residential, and recreational uses. The applicant is proposing development clusters or sub-areas of similar or complementary uses. The location and combination and intensity of uses, however, is not specified in the application, which is attached as Appendix A to your staff report. The broad range of proposed uses, without a specific development concept proposed for any particular area, creates a very broad, open-ended zone across a large area in otherwise rural environment. We have a couple of recommendations ultimately that will enable you to consider this proposal further, but suggest that because of the breadth of the application, the breadth of the uses that are proposed, that the applicants provide some additional information to assist you in your consideration of their proposal. I'll jump right to that, and then I'll talk a little bit about what is in the application. Staff suggests that because of the Staff suggests that because of the lack of specificity in the application, that you pursue a transportation and access strategy. Now, this is a little bit different from language that we sometimes come to you. Sometimes we come to you suggesting that a traffic impact report be prepared. This is not that. This is intended to be a higher level understanding of how these lands will be accessed, knowing the constraints around public road access, the rivers and potential river crossings, and otherwise unsupported infrastructure in the area. We're also suggesting that you obtain a socioeconomic impact report. And the purpose of this report is to understand what might realistically be built on these lands. As I said, at present, the application includes the full breadth of uses permitted within our official community plan. And so our suggestion to you is that in order for you to consider rezoning the lands, as is proposed, you should have some understanding of the likelihood as to what will develop here. So essentially, what will the market support in this area? We suggest to you that that is important so that you and the rest of the community can understand what development might look like. It's important to understand the overall servicing demands of the lands, as well as feeding into that transportation high-level strategy that we're suggesting you obtain. We'd also like to understand the impact of the proposed uses, their development here, relative to other properties that are already zoned for these uses. And finally, we're suggesting that you obtain what we're calling a refined development concept. So, it is difficult, I think, when you take a parcel or 6 parcels of this size and imagine a greenfield development, it is potentially difficult at this stage to be very specific with the zones. And that's not necessarily what we're asking for, but what we are asking for is an expression of the intention of how these lands will develop and the specific areas. So as you know, there are a lot of features within these properties that would suggest that some of the lands are not developable. So whether those are the riparian areas associated with the rivers and the ephemeral watercourses, whether it's because of the stands of second growth forest, the cultural and heritage resources that are on and within the vicinity of the property, there is a lot of land that is essentially should not be developed. And so this is our ask of the applicant to refine where are those specific development pockets within the overall properties. We're asking that you obtain this information prior to going to external agency referral, and that would unfold in that we would obtain, hopefully, the information from the applicant, and then we would proceed with external agency referral. And we're thinking that this lines up well with the coming months and the lack of meetings, so that during this fall, we can review the material that's provided, initiate that external and First Nations referral process, and then come back in the early new year with the findings of that feedback. We also have a recommendation in the report to obtain your approval to discuss amenity contribution with the applicant. So the applicant includes reference in their application to an interest in providing some amenity, and we would like your approval to have that discussion with them. And we would suggest to you that the tool that you could use to obtain amenity through the development would be a density benefits bonus. Pardon me, there, I just caught myself. A density benefits bylaw. We used to call it a density bonusing bylaw. No more. Density benefits bylaw. Yeah, and like I'll talk a little bit perhaps about the application itself as needed, but I think at this point it might be good to hand it over to the applicant just to describe their vision, if that suits you.
Welcome. I think they got your PowerPoint up.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, staff, my name is Mark Holland. I'm here as part of the applicant team. It's a pleasure to be here with this morning. Thank you for the opportunity to offer a few thoughts on this. I'd like to leave you in the next dozen slides or so just with a few key points. The first one is that these are new owners and an entirely new chapter. The previous chapter is gone. Those owners and participants have no interest or any engagement whatsoever. So this is a whole fresh start and a new way of approaching this. We started the entire project with the intent of implementing your OCP. I realize there's an OCP amendment attached, so it can be confusing, but the amendment is to bring the remnant of this lands that was outside your current OCP under your current OCP. and your regional growth strategy. The third point I'd like to leave you with is this is a collaborative approach, and as such, it's unusual in its dynamic. And that's going to underpin the fundamental request we have of you today, which is to permit the referrals to proceed prior to these additional studies. And I'll explain why, in order to avoid wasting staff time and money. And we need more feedback to determine the scope of these. So I'll talk you through all of that right now. The land's roughly 500 acres over 6 parcels, as has been noted. We're really dealing with the convergence of the Browns and Puntledge Rivers, and then a small amount of land on the north and south sides of the Puntledge Rivers after that. The new chapter began a number of years ago, and in the approach that we took to this was, rather than proposing changes to your regional vision, we started with your regional vision. We read through in detail the intent of the regional growth strategy and of the OCP and the other applicable policy documents, and we sat down to commence the process of bringing the zoning on these lands into alignment with your OCP, because the current zoning is not in alignment with the diversity of the rural employment lands you have envisioned there. We also did some other studies, environmental, archaeological, which I'll talk about in a moment. But the intent of this is a collaborative and iterative process. It's not possible to imagine that this process will proceed without several rounds of referrals and review, because we have to do this together because it's such an important piece of land for the community. So the land, as you all know this piece of land fairly well. The purpose here then is to implement your vision. But in order to implement your vision through zoning and subsequent steps, we've discovered through many years of our own work that it really helps to put sort of a straw man out there to get the feedback. If we ask someone, what do agricultural uses mean? We all get a picture in our minds, but none of that picture is shared. And so we sat down to begin to figure out, what do these words mean that are in the OCP, and what would they mean as a land use? And this is where, as staff noted, we've conveyed that to you in kind of a set of scenarios, if you will. So what kinds of land uses in a zoning bylaw would support agriculture? So we've worked through your zoning bylaw and other agricultural zones you have and other ones in the region, and noted, obviously growing field crops, maybe food processor, the field results processing, maybe farm gate sales might work, aquaculture, et cetera. So we put a list together of those. Same thing with each of these other uses. We asked AI to draw a picture of what they all look like, so those emerged there, but that is not what we would necessarily expect to be built per se, but they were there as an illustration of the uses to see that they all really are in accordance. We have already done one edit, and I want to thank staff for working collaboratively with us over the past year as we got this started. Some of the uses that were very definitely fell within these OCP land sector use sectors were deemed to be maybe too traffic intensive. There was some anxiety that they might impact the downtown, and so we took them out. So anything that was like that, and we see this as that iterative process of taking things out as we move along. So this proposed list of uses in the zoning is just a starting point for the discussion. The key thing is we now need some feedback from other parties, ministries, agencies. We've opened a very positive conversation with KFN through the archaeology and acquired a chip from them through the process, but we've not sat down with them to understand better their interests on the site and what they're thinking of in doing their lands that are immediately adjacent. Before we would do these extra studies, we need to get more feedback from the ministry on this. For instance, aquaculture is very clearly a comfortable use of agriculture. However, if the ministry that oversees water permitting comes back and suggests that maybe there's not enough water available on the site, then we can take aquaculture off the list. There's a whole range of feedback we need to begin to reduce this list of uses from the broad start point where we're at right now. As I mentioned, we've already started trying to organize and reduce these. We took a look at the site, we looked at the access, we looked at the lands, the topography and the sensitive areas, and began to kind of organize what we understood might be appropriate clusters of these uses in different sub-areas. However, we've not had a chance to talk to the neighbors around these immediate areas to determine their thoughts and interests, because each of these sub-areas would have different access requirements. They have different cultural requirements and they have different environmental sensitivities. And as such, we would like some time to talk with the neighbors and with the community about these uses. In terms of the parks, this is obviously, I think, one of the most important aspects of this. As per your policies in the OCP, we're very comfortable with the donation of a very significant part of the lands to you in order to achieve the lot size requirement of 10 acres or 4 hectares. That's an excellent size for your market and your industrial lands here, agricultural, et cetera. They makes it kind of affordable for folks to get in, but large enough to do quite a few things on it. I think what we hope from this is that these rivers and the public parks uses that have been part of the history of this community are all now returned to the ability for folks to use these. But there's a number of conversations that need to occur as we move forward, and we need feedback from the Comox First Nation. We need feedback from some of the ministries to begin to be able to determine exactly where some of these boundaries would best be. We started a conversation with the Comox over a year ago. It's been a very positive working relationship with them. We've undertaken a full cultural review, an archaeology review of this site, working with them, and received the inspection permit from them for this work. There's 12.5 or so areas we were interested. Some of them were in different locations than we thought when we first got started, but we're very pleased with the clarity. They overlap fairly significantly with the environmentally sensitive areas based on the historical use of along the river and the areas immediately adjacent to the river and the wetlands. So we were pleased to see that there's a logic to where this area is. However, the discussion with the Comox First Nation is best undertaken next after a formal referral. We've spoken with them. They understand it's coming. Chief and council are very busy at the moment, as you know, through their treaty process, and sort of abstract discussions in the absence of a formal referral become more of a challenge. If the referral is there, it allows us to have a specific conversation with them about what's proposed, about their interests, and about what we might do about their historical interests. We started already with some significant work. I've now mentioned the archaeology discussion. We did a full environmental impact assessment on the area to determine what the sensitive areas were from many different points of view, species, raptor nests, setbacks from all the different types of wetlands, et cetera, that are in the area. So we're very pleased to have a pretty clear and fairly granular layout of that. And it would be our intent, obviously, well, just to meet regulations to keep any of the development away from those areas. So the areas where development or impact can occur are already fairly clear. We also completed a wildfire hazard assessment and a hydrology study. And this becomes another really key component of the discussion. In terms of access, you all know how the site is accessed. There's 2 bridges that come across, one off the Browns and one off Puntledge. The Browns River is a public bridge that comes into here. The Puntledge one is a private one from the Forest Company. The internal layout of the roads is not yet known because we don't know how the site is best laid out yet, pending the final use list that we think is probably the right one to move forward. Some land uses require larger areas, some smaller areas. Some of them are much more comfortable next to maybe an environmentally sensitive area. Others are not so comfortable next to those. So we're seeking some feedback during the referrals process to help us then begin to refine this and the land use and the access strategy. We did do some preliminary assessment of the public bridge that covers the Browns River, and it is in good condition. So the access capacity here would be basically the same as any 2-lane road in your regional area. So we don't see a problem with being able to access it. But we do want to hear from the Ministry of Transportation on any of their plans or concerns in the area before we undertake any more work to discover any other issues or begin to refine this. So we've done a fair amount of homework already on this. Clearly, you know how beautiful and entrepreneurial this region is and what the opportunities are. There's quite a significant range of jobs that are expected, the housing in the more urban areas to support that, and a need for more of these areas. The water and servicing one, I think, is maybe the most important. We really, because these will be commercial uses, they will require water licenses. Our hydrology study shows that there are multiple aquifers under this site. What we don't know is how closely connected they are to the rivers and the surface capacity that's been allocated. So as you know, the Comox First Nation has significant rights to water. There are other water licenses in the area. to pursue beginning to limit or change a proposed land use list without some feedback from the ministries about how they're going to approach the future availability of water, and a discussion with KFN under the formal referrals process. We are worried that we would be wasting staff time, our time, money guessing at what's available. If it turns out water is not very available because it's been allocated, then we clearly begin to take uses like aquaculture out of the referrals list, because to leave them in would merely to set someone up for failure in the future if they bought the land thinking they could do that. But we don't know this yet. So there's also the question of what study terms would be needed in order to determine the linkage between the aquifers and the rivers. And we need feedback from the ministry to begin to pursue on that one, to pursue that further. So what we were asking for is permission to begin the referrals process now, and get this feedback so that then we can undertake work with your staff to clarify the scopes of work that are needed on these studies. We have no problem with the studies and the additional work that's needed. We just need to understand what the scope needs to be, and we need the referrals process round one in order to help us inform that process. One of the other components that we want to do with this is engagement. Now, we've already started with some. We have a website up already, puntledgelands.ca. We have the owner's rep who's here today. Leon has spent quite a bit of time talking to stakeholders over the last 2 years on the project. As we discussed and thought about when and how to do this, we came to the conclusion that in a public open house, which we intend to hold, we're going to get a lot of we're going to get questions that we don't know the answer to until we've proceeded through the referrals process, such as how much water is available and things like this, or how would the ministry approach those things. So our hope is that we would then have the referrals underway, and we will start and continue some of the stakeholder engagement, but we'd like to get some of that input back before we hold a public meeting and ask the community to come out. We don't like doing that when we don't know answers to a bunch of questions. It just doesn't set up. We'd like to be able to say, this is what the ministry has said, and this is what we're hoping to do. Plus, the conversation with KFN and others might be quite significant in how they impact the questions the community will have. So our hope here tonight is just, if I can return to our core components, our core points of here this morning. This is a new chapter. The entire chapter is intended to implement your OCP and RGS vision. The discussion underway here is primarily on zoning to get the land use list appropriate. There are many steps yet ahead, including a subdivision. There might be multiple stages of that to first carve out the rivers and get them into public access and protection zones, and then begin systematically a multi-phase project of figuring out where the right roads and like parcelization would be for the land uses we ultimately agree on. So we agree the work needs to be done. Our concern is that we'll just be guessing without the first round of referrals, and we'd like to make sure the terms for that work are very clearly laid out, and thus the request to you would be in the motion to permit the referrals to proceed now, rather than waiting for us to do these preliminary studies and hope that we get it right and take more time doing that, which we think the negotiations and discussion with staff may well be slightly or significantly altered following the further input from the agencies as well as KFN and the community, which we would like to do. So thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'm here. We have members of the team here as well to answer any questions you have, and we look forward to working with you going forward. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that. I'm going to throw it open now for directors' questions, and Director Arbor has a question.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And I'll somewhat apologize in advance for my comments, but it's just I've heard a lot in the presentation about, a collaborative approach and the need to consult with the ministry with this, but I didn't hear so much about the need to consult with us at this table today, and that's where it currently sits. So hopefully the applicants are welcoming feedback from the directors. This is the third go around that I've been involved in regards to this issue, and unfortunately, I do not see that substantive difference that the new proponent seems to see in the project, in that I'm still seeing a proposal that is very density intense, as per similar proposal currently the zonings are for 20 to 30 hectares minimum. This current proposal goes to 4 hectares. A lot of commercial, a lot of, and then there was a lot of references in the presentation about alignment with ROCP and regional growth strategy, but yet, it's again in ROCP and our zoning bylaw, it shows that 20 or 30 hectares minimum. So I'm just struggling a bit here. At the same time, I know that we all share an interest in figuring something out in regards to those lands, but multiple times different regional district boards have made decisions on drawing a line around urban sprawl type development and high intensity development in that area. And I still see a really intense kind of approach to it. So I'm not a closed mind, but I think asking for 4 hectare minimum in the level of density, I agree with staff. And then to ask us right away to not follow staff's advice, which I'm actually not that excited about the staff's advice, but I'm willing to go with it, which is to really consider the parameters of what is possible, both on a land base and on a market perspective, which seems reasonable steps, and transportation. It feels like we would rush through into another situation that we encountered the last 2 times. So I would unexcitedly support the 2 recommendations from staff today to, at minimum, get a better understanding of the fits from our perspective, not from the perspective or the ministry or from COMOX, from the CVRD perspective, and allow staff some latitude, some degree of latitude to continue discussions with the owners. But I felt the presentation to me was, even though I know the consulting team feels this is a different approach, to me, it did not feel that different from prior presentations. I'll return it back to Chair. Thank you.
Lana, do you have comments on that?
Thank you very much, Chair. Through the chair to the directors. As staff, we thought long and hard about the recommendation. And the reason that we landed where we did is, which is that you obtain this information, is because we have a really good sense of what our agencies are looking for and what our public expects when we go out to them and ask for their feedback. We've had the benefit certainly of having these very lands under application previously. We've also had the benefit of other large development applications. And so it is not opaque to us at all what our agency, our referral agencies will be looking for, what the public will be looking for. And that's what we've tried to summarize for you. Without the socioeconomic work, there is no apparent rationale to support a change of this magnitude. There's no indication that the lands could feasibly be developed for these uses without that work. And so that's why we're suggesting to the applicant, show us that work that you've done in building your pro forma to show us that this is a serious development proposal that you're looking at doing. Without the transportation study, there's no way to access these lands. We know that our agencies and our public need to know how will these lands be developed and where will the access occur. Those are critical pieces of feedback that we know, of information that our public and agencies are looking for. And without the high level sort of concept, that refined concept, there's no sense of how the lands will be developed. So we know that agencies and our public will just flag their interests, their values in the lands, and then say that they need to be protected. We know that. And so this is our effort to give the applicant the opportunity to put their best foot forward, to show you that they've done the work and that they have a development concept that they believe is viable. And that's the rationale for our recommendation. In respect to a comment about the aquaculture example, Mark has suggested that they're looking for the ministry to give them feedback on whether or not there's water availability. We know that that's not how it works. The ministry is not going to undertake the study work. No ministry is going to undertake the study work to tell an applicant what their lands might support. That's just not how it unfolds. The avenue, of course, is for an applicant to start making water license applications. You know, if they're really wanting to drill down and be ensured that they have the water volume that is required for their uses. That's the process. I'm not clear on the applicant's suggestion that external referral is required in order for them to pursue conversations either with agencies or with COMOX. This staff report and its appendices, has been sent to COMOX. And so COMOX has the same information that we do now and can use that information to initiate their process, have discussions, undertake their business in the way that makes sense to them. So there's nothing additional we would suggest to going to the step of external referral, except that we will have our agencies and our public ask us why on earth we didn't get more information from these folks before we used their time to assess a proposal. We think this is a reasonable way to proceed. We think it's the way that our agencies and our public expect us to proceed. And we don't see any loss of time for the applicant if that is the concern. This is the long haul, as Mr. Holland has suggested. And so we do not see this step as recommended by staff as endangering or making any fatal flaw in the applicant's proposed timeline. Thank you.
Any comments from the other directors? Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So just going back to recommendation number one, it makes reference with regards to direct staff to start the external agency referral process and consult with First Nations in accordance with the referrals management program dated September 25th, 2012. I know things have changed a lot with regards to consultation processes or programs to date with First Nations in comparison to 2012. So that was my only concern when I was reading the recommendation is the referrals management program dated September 25th, 2012, a little dated?
Through the chair to the directors, it probably is. And that's something that James and Christiane have raised with COMOX staff, that if and when the nation's ready, we can certainly open up and have another look. In the meantime, what it's meant is that what we do through that process, we send the material and then invite COMOX staff to identify whether or not they want follow-up meetings. And so that has worked reasonably well. I think, what we've heard in terms of feedback in the past is the interest in obtaining information sooner. So as soon as we know. So in this case, as soon as we got this application, James shared with staff, with COMOX staff, that we had the application, and that if the EA directors chose to advance the application, that they would receive a referral. And so, as you know, with our meetings that we have regularly with elected chief and council, there's an opportunity at any point for chief and council to identify if they want a specific item brought forward. And we can do that. And that is wholly independent of a development proposal timing. We can do that whenever it's deemed important to do so.
Thanks, Chair. I guess one of the other thoughts in the back of my mind, being that the presentation came up revolving around access to water and access to aquifers. And I know this probably doesn't fall into the CVRD jurisdiction, but just wondering, with climate change, studies revolving around impacts upon the Pottens River and the Browns River. And as we see those rivers kind of increase in temperature, decrease in the volume of water, what kind of environmental impact do the aquifers get impacted now with the lower levels of the water? And I guess that would be a concern that we might have to undertake or take into consideration, is how much of the aquifers are going to be feeding the Pottens River and the Browns River. Maybe everything's okay today, But what if over the next 10 to 15 years, as we see climate change and the levels of the poundage in the Browns River come down, are the aquifers feeding those systems or the other tributaries that drift into those systems? So I think that's one of the things that, like you said, I'm sure this falls under somebody else's authority or jurisdiction other than Comox Valley Regional District. But when you're making those decisions with regards to how much density are you going to allow down the road, how much access to those aquifers, and does that access to those aquifers impact river systems for fish and cultural purposes down the road? Thanks.
If I might, through the chair, I think this is part of the criticality of understanding the uses. And you're right, we don't have the in-house expertise. I don't have the expertise to make that assessment, but I think that is where in narrowing the uses, it's really being able to understand how do we future-proof, if as much as we can, to understand the resilience or sustainability of uses. Similar to the trajectory that we've been on with floodplain management, in that we're now required to be looking at future scenarios. This is something that we have to do with water as well.
Well, I think the elephant in the room here, of course, is the park acquisition. I think we have to keep our eye on the prize. We have a willing partner in this. We have a new owner. Let's not screw it up. I think it's reasonable to for the proponent to want to get more information. When you talk about, they don't know what they don't know. Transportation strategy, well, that normally comes up under the subdivision, doesn't it? We're talking about, you say it's a different kind of a strategy, but to form the concept, I think that it's reasonable for the proponent to want more information. I mean, you talk about socioeconomic. Well, what impact? What is the socioeconomic? What is the proposals? My understanding, and Mark, you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that there is no appetite by this owner to be a developer. He's not proposing to go in there with bulldozers and build something like some of the other things that have come before us. So it's basically just a rezoning, which is, would bring some comfort to the finances of the company that we're dealing with. But there's so many decision points along that road where we can say no. We can only say yes once, or at the beginning. We're faced with a lot of unknowns. If I may, just I think we got to be careful not to put the cart before the horse. We've heard that we're just guessing on a lot of this stuff, because I think that we have to separate this from a development, because it's not a development, it's a rezoning. And it's the first step we can take to engage on the park acquisition, which, as you know, is our #1 priority in our parks plan, both parks plans. So a lot of this stuff can be done further down in the process, I think. I think we're asking questions that there's no answer for at this point. I mean, when we say 4 hectare minimum, that doesn't mean that every lot's going to be cookie cuttered into 4 hectares. That's worst case scenario. I don't think we would approve that, because we do have other decision points where we can approve or not approve these projects going forward. Same token, I think we have to be cognizant of of property owners spinning their wheels. We've seen that in a lot of things where, we basically ask for $500,000 worth of reports and turn them down at the end of it anyway. So there is that fear out there in the community, the business community. I think I'd be willing to. It's very totally reasonable to go out and get some community input. I think that's essential. I think that the marketplace is going to dictate what the development's going to be. That, and of course, restraints on the servicing and what have you. So we can't just go and fabricate something. I mean, those are nice little renderings there, the riding ring and the agricultural processing facility, but who knows, it might be a wellness center, So we don't know. We're living in a time economically where there's so much uncertainty, any investment dollars are going to be hard come by. But this is the owner of the property saying, we want to develop this, we want to get our investment back, and we're offering, and as far as it goes, we're offering to work with the regional district on a park that would be, the showpiece of the shining jewel of the Comox Valley parks. So I don't think, we get into, we're getting in too much into the minutia on this. My feeling is that, there's very little economic activity out there right now. So maybe they do the rezoning and we get the park acquisition and the market collapses and they're left holding all these parcels. So yeah, I just think, putting it through the meat grinder right now is not really helpful. Some engagement, feedback from the ministries, open houses with the public. I mean, that's all good stuff. They've already done preliminary engagement with KFN. More engagement, of course, is needed. We want to refine the development. Well, I think the information will refine the development. Water and servicing is a big part. Obviously, we can't move forward without that. But, some of the stuff is like I say, it's a little premature. It should happen a little farther on downstream. So I'd like to know what we can do. The second motion, of course, I'm in favor, but I would like to know what we can do to allow the property owners to research some of this stuff and get some of the answers, get some of the feedback, get the vision of the community rather than, than the CVRD, trying to fabricate something, would been, could have been, might be, all that. I think, obviously we've got to refine it, but I think the proposal of going out for referrals at this point, I would support. Thank you. Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just a follow-up on a point that you put forward with regards to this isn't a development, but a rezoning process or application. So the question that I have for staff is based upon amendments being made to the regional growth strategy and the OCP in 27 moving forward. Does it make sense right now to do a rezoning right now when we're still working on that process of the amendments to the RGS and the OCP in 27? Are we putting the cart before the horse as the chair has made mention of earlier? Thanks.
Through the chair to the directors, thank you for the question. You might deem that you'd like to have that larger policy discussion around growth with the community through that exercise of an RGS, a standard RGS review. You certainly might. That was sort of what was on the table back in 2018, was the look at whether the creation of a new settlement node, a new rural settlement node, could be supported. If you were doing it through the OCP, I would suggest to you, you've got the same opportunity now as you would through, well, maybe not the same, but a similar opportunity as you would through a comprehensive OCP. So in this case, in order to move forward, an OCP amendment is required because most of the lands retain their designation under our old official community plan. And so there is the opportunity for us to establish policy for you to consider that's site specific to the land. So I think you could do it now or you could do it later. But if you're looking at a density and an intensity that is greater than what's contemplated in the rural settlement area, then it would have to be later when we're opening up, if the board opens up the RGS. The point that you originally started with, Director Grieve, I believe, was the reference to the whether or not this is development. And I just want to make it really clear that development rights are conferred at the time of zoning. They're not conferred. I mean, when you get to subdivision, you're just acting out those development rights, you're implementing them. But this is when you confer development rights. And the density bonus tool that I talked about, you only get parkland or whatever amenities might be identified in that density benefit at time of subdivision. You don't get the parkland or other amenities if the proponent does not proceed to subdivision. So I would suggest to you, it's really, really important to make sure that you are getting a development proposal to the point that you could really live with it at time of subdivision at this stage. Because if you're equating the value of the development with acquisition of parkland, you might not get the parkland. So if you're going to confer development rights, then I think you would want to do so in a way that you have a development, a zoning that you think makes good sense, that it's in the public interest, irrespective of the amenities that you may get at time of subdivision. So that the era of being able to extract community amenity contributions at rezoning is over.
I would suggest you went to the public today. They would be in favor of moving forward with this project because of the end result will be that we will get that property in public hands. It may not be a total amenity given by the developer. It may be something that's has to be negotiated with cash and what have you. But I would say the public would be in support of this moving forward. Director Arbor. You're muted.
Yeah, thanks. I think, Chair, that Alana took made the comments I was going to make. Maybe I was going to make them in a slightly crisper way, in the sense that rezoning is our primary tool at local government. And once the rezoning is given, as you know, with the ministry running subdivision and all that, we start to lose a lot of any leverage that we have. So the notion that the proponent is not a developer and that it's only rezoning and there won't be bulldozers. Actually, the point of rezoning is to bring the bulldozer. It may not be the same firm that does it, but it's the same outcome. So I think I disagree with the chair's assessment of the situation. Where we do agree is that, yes, there's always been an interest in that area, primarily for Stoughton Falls and the park. And twice it's been declined at great pains, after great pains and great efforts by everybody, both the developers and the regional district. And honestly, I'm speaking fairly bluntly today, because if I saw a pathway today, I would be thrilled. But again, it's another proposal with extremely high density that the community, and I heard Chair say about, well, why don't they do an open house and we get, the RGS and the OCP has gone through tremendous public input at both the municipal level and the regional district and rural area residents. And I would also say that people have been pretty clear that they do not want unchecked urban sprawl in all directions, and that is reflected in our RGS in our rural areas. And there are areas where we encourage development, be it Black Creek, being Union Bay, being some of the extension area, like much of Area B and Royston. So we're very clear. We have a very clear framework for developers to understand what the regional vision is, which was informed by, the last 20 years of public input. So, and yes, Chair is right. There is appetite at the board. I think it's public knowledge that as part of our regional park service, which is new as of 2022, the Puntledge and Stoughton Falls area ranks very high. But we also know it doesn't rank very high at all costs. You're creating another city or area of development that doesn't have proven water, as Director Hardy has mentioned, that doesn't have proven flow with the rest of the valley, that doesn't have all these different elements. I think staff is absolutely right and to ask for those reports, and I would probably ask for a few more myself, because I don't want to waste time. Like I do agree with Chair on that. We don't want to waste time, but when people bring forward a proposal, which in my opinion doesn't cut it, it's our responsibility to be clear about that. And I think staff is trying to show a pathway to keep the conversation going. So that's my opinion. I'd be happy with just declining this proposal altogether today, or again, reluctantly going with staff's recommendation to have a few more reports that will inform both the proponent and ourselves around the parameters, constraints, and opportunities tied to those lands before we take it to, as Lana said, to very informed partners that have worked with us for quite some time around these issues.
Thank you. Once again, I would say that it's a little, I think there's a confusion around the original proposal, which did propose dense residential development. We're talking about 9 acres. And I think possibly you could put, 2 buildings on it, 2 houses on it, but I don't see that as part of the mix. They were looking for other alternatives. I think that dense residential development is not on offer here. And once again, I think that the proponent needs to get more information to answer some of these questions. I'm certainly willing to entertain some kind of a hybrid between the two recommendations, but I do think that we have to keep this moving forward. You remember, Director, a long time ago, I kept saying, we got to keep talking. We got to keep talking. We got to keep talking. And we did, until the point where the original owner sold the land, and he sold it to this owner. I think we're in a much better place right now. When you talk about all this consultation over the regional growth strategy, man, I was there. That was like 2010 and 2011. That's a fair amount of time has passed since then. I would say that a lot of the people have passed away. So to use that as the template and to say, well, we're going to have a regional growth strategy. I've heard a review. Well, I've heard that for the last 15 years as well. And, we're at a point right now where I do think it needs a fulsome review, especially with the expansion of the airbase and all the rest there. This is not part of that. This is a different discussion. It should be treated as a different discussion. It should be treated as a very special situation. I think bringing the developer in from the cold is really important here. And sure, we're going to get to that point. We're going to get there. But I think we need some more background information. I think that is something that they can go and get. Yeah, I don't think it's realistic. The recommendation number 1 is before us. Thank you. I will not be voting for it. Director Arbor?
No, I'm good, Chair. I'd be prepared to Obviously, we disagree on this one, but I would be prepared to move the recommendations as per the staff report.
I can maybe just weigh in, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Hearing the discussion, hearing the presentation, Mark, I certainly appreciate the interest in being able to advance this and issue the referral before these specific pieces of work. I understand that interest. I also understand the perspective that Alana brings in that we have knowledge of working with our partner agencies and the other referral parties. And I think the worry would be that referral comments may not put us any further ahead, and we might then have the specificity that we feel the socioeconomic report, the refined development concept, and the transportation access strategy would be able to provide to those referral agents and give good consideration to that. So we are trying to advance this in a most expeditious way and be able to provide more context, I guess, to the application. So certainly understand both sides to the equation here. I do think, though, from knowing how we work with our referral agents, they would value having that additional context and being able to provide comment on that material. The timing is such that I think either process would move along to early 2027 reporting back to the Electoral Area Services Committee at that time. But I feel that with these additional study works, before we undertake the formal referral, it would provide more content and more context for the referral agents to respond back meaningfully. So the decision here for the Electoral Area Services Committee today is to proceed with the recommendations 1 or 2, 1 and 2, I would suggest, or as noted in the staff report, proceed with the referral of the development application as it is currently. We would still suggest that recommendation number 2 be supported, such that we can have those conversations if you go that way. But it really is for the Electoral Area Services Committee here to make those decisions.
Thank you, Mr. CAO and Director Hardy.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and I appreciate the discussion and the presentation. Again, I'm just wanting to confirm how I'm reading recommendation number 1, and I know we're still in receipt, but maybe I'll ask the question now instead of waiting until we get to the recommendation. I'm just trying to understand recommendation number 1 with regards to how I read is what we're recommending is that the proponent go and do their homework, and referrals go out to different agencies with regards to any thoughts and concerns that they may have moving forward, and that there's an openness for open houses to occur where the proponent can go and get information from folks within the Comox Valley. That's kind of how I'm reading the recommendation. And if it's about the proponent going out and doing their homework and providing information to staff, that's probably a good thing. If I'm reading the recommendation that way, and maybe staff could help me out with regards to that, but maybe we can do that after we've received the report, and then we can go to recommendation. I can ask questions on the recommendation then, or is it okay to ask them now?
Yeah, no, I think it's okay now. I think Alana, please do jump in here. But I think I think you're right. We are suggesting that you endorse the referral process, subject to receiving from the proponent the 3 studies that were noted. And so those studies would provide the context that we are feeling is needed to be able to provide a more meaningful referral program. I'm sorry.
Didn't know you shut yourself off. Director?
Yeah, thanks. So in regards to going through that process, if I understand correctly, there's an openness from the proponent to house or hold some open house sessions over the next little while as well to get community input and thoughts with regards to that process. Because if you get 50,000 people in the Comox Valley coming to the open houses and saying nay, nay, then I think that helps the proponent, and that helps the regional district at the end of the day, right? But if there's 50,000 who are saying, hey, we'd really like to see, a closer, a more developed and more detailed plan, then I think we need to listen to that as well, right? So that's the question that I'm asking right now is, again, understanding this recommendation right now is, again, we're looking at these processes and some reports that come back to staff. But in that meantime as well, if I'm understanding from the presentation, is there's a willingness from the proponent to hold some open houses throughout the Comox Valley to get some input and thoughts with regards to this process. Is that right? Is that how I'm reading it? Or am I completely out to lunch with regards to how I'm reading the recommendation?
I'm going to pose a question to Alana here, but I did hear from the applicant, from Mr. Holland, that there is an interest, a very willingness to engage and to do this in a meaningful way, understanding the importance of the area to the Comox Valley. My question to Alana would relate to timing around that kind of open house engagement and community engagement with respect to recommendation number 1 here. And when would that be an appropriate means to undertake that work? So yeah, if you can speak to that in terms of sequencing.
Thank you. Through the chair to the directors. So the act of having this report presented today means it's out in the public. So everyone can see the applicant's proposal. They can look back at this video, hear your conversation. They'll have all of the material that the applicant has provided us in their application, their preliminary servicing strategy, etc. So if the applicant wanted to pursue consultation with agencies, with the public, they're free to do so. And I think for me, usually the hinge point when I would suggest to an applicant that it becomes appropriate to do so is when their application is out in the public. And so that's where we're there now. In respect to timing for the CBRD's consultation strategy, I would suggest that what we had envisioned here was that if you support the recommendation that we do go ahead with external agency referral, that would be happening over the course of the fall when the EASC is not sitting. And then in early, depending on the meeting scheduling, January, February, we come back to our new EASC. We present the findings of the external agency referral, any new information the applicant has provided. We talk to you about, next steps, which could include the adoption of a consultation plan, which would include, if I'm using my crystal ball into the future, I would suggest would benefit, an application of this size would benefit from us hosting CBRD hosted public information sessions, in addition to any statutory requirements that we might require if you proceed with the application.
Yeah, as I see it, unless you're going to come up with various scenarios and do various social and economic impact reports, it's just too nebulous right now. So I think that the property owner really has to go out and define that vision somehow. Like I say, it's kind of a multi-use zoning that offers a lot of options. So there's a lot of scenarios. I think we don't want to get into fear mongering with the public and suggesting it's going to be some intense development, because that just isn't what's on offer here. So we're going to get to the point of calling the question pretty soon. So any more comments? Okay, so I'll call the question on receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? Okay, so that carries. And the recommendation.
I'll move
No.
on.
I'll second one.
Yeah. Any more discussion on the recommendation? Anything we want to add to the recommendation? So on the recommendation, I'll call a question. All those in favor?
I'm in favor.
Okay.
Recommendation 1.
Recommendation 1. That carries. And need someone to move recommendation 2.
Move to.
I'll second 2.
Okay, on 2. All those in favor?
I'm in favor 2.
That carries as well. Thank you very much.
Good conversation.
And now from the frying pan into the flames. Number 7, Saratoga Beach Area Plan Bylaw Readings, a report for receipt.
Move receipt.
Move a second on receipt. And over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. And judging from the cast of characters who've come to the table here, this is a significant report for the Electoral Area Services Committee's consideration. Significant, more so than other times you've seen this particular topic, in that the plan itself is being presented today for consideration of readings, following which Monica will introduce, following a very involved process. So Monica Whitney Brown is our Planner 1 Long Range, and Monica will be introducing the presentation, supported by Robin Holm, Manager of Long Range Planning Sustainability, Brian Chow, Planner 2 Long Range, and Derry Monteith, Manager of Liquid Waste Management Planning. I think I got that one right for Derry. Monica, over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, almost, about afternoon now. Thank you so much for having me. So for a reminder and some context setting, hang on one second. Lisa, would you be able to switch to the next slide? Thanks. So for a reminder and context setting for anyone who may be joining us, a local area plan is a detailed land use plan and development guide for a specific community, of course, in this case, the settlement node of Saratoga Beach. This LAP before you is very much a reflection of the community's priorities and aspirations. It's not the general contractor role, that would be the regional growth strategy, or the worker bee that is filled, of course, by the zoning bylaw, but the LAP provides clarity on direction, setting objectives and policies which will enable staff and decision makers to advance the Saratoga Beach community's values through land use. The Saratoga Beach LAP has a planning horizon of 5 to 10 years, and as such, it's a reflection of current conditions. We figured out what those conditions are through some important targeted technical studies, which capture a baseline and a snapshot of this community. The septic suitability analysis before you as Appendix B used existing data and previous work to create a comprehensive analysis of wastewater management in this area, including quantifying cumulative impacts associated with continuing to rely on on-site sewer systems to support density. The report was authored by Michael Payne, who also completed the 2015 report many of you are familiar with. So while septic issues have long been identified as concerns in the LAP area, this study really allowed us to make policies on growth management rooted in the hydrogeological data and the updated professional recommendations. Appendix C is the ecosystem classification report, and this provides a current and complete spatial analysis of the natural assets and the environmental values of the LAP area, including identification of highest potential conservation value areas and the most significant areas for restoration where that could be improved. And this in-depth ecological analysis meant the environmental policies in this plan are rooted in accurate and updated data. As noted in today's delegation and in the report before you, we also completed a rudimentary costing for a community sewer system. And this was undertaken on a settlement node scale in order to understand whether a high growth scenario could be contemplated for the area. Our engineering colleagues provided a high-level cost estimate for a public sewerage system for the plan area to support this planning level review of a high growth scenario. And these costs were found well outside and affordable levels relative to household income of the LAP. Further refinement of this servicing scenario, including a reduced scale option, could be completed through non-policy processes like a liquid waste management plan, if there's an interest from this committee on that. So what this LAP does do and what it does contain are policies to reflect the current known conditions of the area, including policies to limit further development in capacity constrained areas where those risks around on-site sewage systems are really the most severe. And this would be in order to curtail any further public health and environmental cumulative impacts on the receiving environment from on-site septic systems. The LAP also does not preclude or close the door on further long-term liquid waste management solution. Instead, it actually includes policies on exploring tools which would be the appropriate avenue to address these impacts, like a liquid waste management plan. So the LAP is really an important first step for that kind of next tool to be considered, and establishes the necessary land use planning framework from which that analysis could take place. The community's aspirations and values were, I would say, the most significant driving force behind this plan. It's imperative, of course, that an LAP be a reflection of the community itself. We had over 400 different folks respond to at least one of the 2 community surveys we conducted. And once we had translated all of that valuable community feedback from the spring 2025 engagement into objectives and policies, we undertook another rigorous public input period to get feedback on the draft. So we had 78 people attend the open house recently on June 1st, and 94 people respond to the survey on the draft. We did community-wide postcard mail outs to all households in the LAP area, letting them know about those engagement opportunities, 3 newspaper notices, social media posts, newsletter updates to the Engage Comox Valley subscribers. We posted a virtual LAP walkthrough video on Engage Comox Valley with some help from our summer students. And the LAP was reviewed in detail by the Area C Advisory Planning Commission, who we completed 2 engagements with. And the results of how these engagement results were incorporated into the LAP before you are detailed in Appendix D and Appendix E of this report, which I know is quite lengthy. The feedback from the community on the plan and on the engagement process was overwhelmingly positive, which was really great to see and hear. So the plan has been a result of so much really generous input, I would say, as well as buy-in and excitement from the Saratoga Beach public community, and the important results from the technical experts as well integrated. The plan advances the community values through specific direction. I want to highlight a few of the significant effects that the LAP will have on the Saratoga Beach area over the next 5 to 10 years. So first, community priorities on beach access and related services are addressed with policies which provide a pathway to having more CVRD managed beach access points and possible beachfront park access. Transportation concerns are reflected in policies which support a focused and prioritized advocacy strategy, which would enable the CVRD to more effectively bring community demands to MOTT, as well as which give direction for future off-road transportation options. There are policies which translate, as I mentioned, concerns on wastewater management and professional recommendations into requirements that capacity-constrained areas, which are already at or above their density limit, not be further developed unless capacity is improved, and which keeps further development to a level which can be safely supported by on-site sewage systems without worsening the cumulative impacts to water quality. And these policies essentially work together to make sure that the wastewater management concerns that we've heard from the community are not being exacerbated in this area. And there's also policies which look towards long-term solutions for those concerns, including outlining the necessary conditions for considering higher density, and policies directing the CVRD to explore tools we've spoken about before, like a receiving environment monitoring program or a liquid waste management plan. There's also policies which could be used to direct park and protected area acquisition and set requirements to address community values, including drainage, water quantity and quality, flood attenuation, and ecosystem health. There are policies to address longstanding land use conflicts and expand tourism and agricultural uses, which the community decided were desirable. So overall, the plan provides a number of new policies, more enabling or broad, to ensure residents have flexible uses of their properties where it's appropriate. And finally, in that final section, there's specific policies on building new or updated operational tools, like zoning bylaw updates, to give all of these policies real teeth. So in closing, the community's interest and engagement in this LAP really is a testimony to the strong and long-standing desire of residents to see their community's interests upheld through a local area plan of their own. Without a dedicated LAP, the area will continue to develop through more fragmented or standalone development applications, rather than through a cohesive strategy which enables the community's aspirations. So this local area plan sets the direction for Saratoga Beach over the next 5 to 10 years through a growth management framework rooted in real local conditions, technical data, and community values translated into practical and tangible policies in order to guide the Saratoga Beach community into the future. At this time, you have a real bevy of staff available to answer any questions you might have about the LAP. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from the directors? Okay, it's no secret that I have some concerns. I think when you consider, first of all, that this plan is going to bring a lot of comfort to the residents of the Saratoga Beach area, because a lot of it pretty well states the obvious. We all want parks. We all want pathways. We all want active transportation. We all want beach access, you know. But at the end of the day, you know, I'm afraid that some of this stuff raises unreasonable expectations that we can actually make this stuff happen. When you look through the report, and I think Curtis Scoville made a good point, it's full of, you know, support, work with, encourage. In fact, and in every case, yeah, again, support, explore, all those kind of fuzzy words that make it look like we're getting forward motion. Now, when you are dealing with MOTI, or you're dealing with Vancouver Island Health, or you're dealing with the Ministry of Environment, or Forest Lands and Operations, you know, I think you're making making assumptions that actually will deal in good faith back. Now, in my 18 years in office, that hasn't been my experience at all. So I do say that, you know, it's all great, and a lot of it is obvious stuff, like, you know, again, explore, monitor, consider, update, consider, define, review. You know, it's all great, and it plays to the sports fans. So, you know, it'll bring a lot of comfort to the general populace there. But as far as getting any forward motion on any of these things, you know, it's limited. So that's one of my major concerns, is people actually expect some tangible results from this. The other thing is we talk about the demographics of the surveys. If you look at the first survey, the Nancy Henderson survey from the year previous, some of the telling stats, 72% of respondents don't have kids. 55% of respondents have lived there less than 15 years. 47% of the population are over 60 years old. 62% are over 50 years old. So, I mean, there's different concerns expressed by, you know, when it comes to things like economic development or tourism, or, you know, for instance, you know, Director Arbor in his district, they're clamoring for kids' playgrounds. You know, was that even a discussion point? So it's a different world, right? But I'm going to move this forward because I really want to get to the open house on the 30th. I think there needs to be some consideration, as was brought up by our presentation earlier in the meeting, around being open to private-public partnership when it comes to liquid waste management. I think that is the long-term solution. But of course, in an economic cycle that goes up and down and back and forth, we've kind of missed the train on that one twice. So, maybe, but if you talk about on-site, then we've got to be sure we don't insert ourselves into that discussion, because that is strictly the ministry that gets to decide through the professional reliance model whether or not that system perks or not. And the development that has been going on with on-site septic systems now, some of the systems they come up with are truly remarkable. So, when they're concerned about a big sand mound in your backyard, I think that is a real concern. But I think that through the right engineers and working with the on-site wastewater professionals, that could probably be remedied. Because it is a concern when you take a look at the fact that along the foreshore, the at-risk area, and this was 2015, and half those wells, those test wells, showed unacceptable levels of fecal coliform and E. coli. So there's a real concern. It's not a pretend one. Who wouldn't want beach accesses? I mean, we've done a lot, but the public have to realize that who's going to stump up the dough? We have to work with MOTI or MOTT. Maybe we could get another beach access somewhere down the line. There's some crown land around there that perhaps we could negotiate with the province to get as a park. But these are slow go processes. So I'm just throwing it out there that this document does not solve the issues, but it goes a long way to hearing the people, and I think that's important. Thank you. Director Arbor has a comment.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's interesting hearing you talk because there was reminded me of Hornby Island, and in that case, it's not a local area plan; it's actually their OCP because they're not quite under the regional district; they're under the Islands Trust, and the entire document is encouraging and should or promote because they don't have the tools to actually impact change. They only have 2 services at CVRD. We have 100, right? And but what I felt in the plan is that where those words popped up, as you said yourself, it's where we did not have authority, and it's just a way to direct clarity around advocacy to different ministries and organizations. I still find it useful to see those in because it's something to point back out for both residents and elected officials and CVRD staff as that being sort of the consensus of the community on these issues. So at least it makes it a little bit harder to dismiss, say, if you go to Ministry of Transportation or others. I think it holds more weight, and I think that is the reason why you had initiated a local area plan in the first place for some of these pieces. On the harder issues, I mean, when I read the plan, mostly what I see is people like what they have and they want some enhancements in the area. I'm not, but let's take, for example, the beach access. So in and of itself, currently the CVRD has a policy not to take over beach accesses anymore. And that would hint that in that area, actually, people, want to see a bit like my playground. They want to see more, better amenities. And maybe you have a few Ministry of Transportation beach accesses that could be considered by the CVRD. So I think there's tangible actions that could come out of this for sure. I'm a little more optimistic about this plan. And but I haven't probably gone as much detail as you would have, it being your area. So for me, I've also had the lens of, is this something that I'll want to do, say, for Union Bay, right? A plan like this, and I'll be reflecting over that this summer. On the sewage issue, I do agree with you. There's a need for innovation in rural areas because the current frameworks are very difficult for lower density neighborhoods. And like you have some challenges with future coastal flooding and existing wetness and all that stuff. So yeah, there's no magic bullet in this report, and I do echo your sense that if your intent was to really identify a clear pathway for some of these issues, I don't think the local area plan is where that particular issue will get resolved. And I know there's been efforts looking at liquid waste management plans and things like that. So, but I also believe there's a real need for innovation in those spaces because we always arrive at really tough places, especially in rural areas. Overall, I just want to acknowledge there's a ton of good data. I mean, for planners, this is really useful documents because there's been a ton of research beyond the public input, even on endangered species, everything else. So it's actually gives a really good deep dive on a better understanding of the area. And I do agree with staff that that could eventually lead at more comprehensive decisions and cohesiveness for the community, and you see that in some of the public comment as well. Like people are looking for harmonious development and things like that. So I think there's a ton of research that for elected officials we won't really delve into it too much, but that for staff it will be very very useful to understand parameters, constraints, and things. All the things we talked about in the prior application. So I would give a good hand to staff and consultants for that work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from directors? So I see we're on receipt. You want to call a question on receipt?
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if I can just weigh in. I've heard you mention a couple times July 30th as an upcoming date, and you've said a couple times community open house. I think the intent is that if this is supported here today, that July 30th would be a public hearing.
An actual public hearing.
Yes,
Oh, joy.
just to clarify.
Nothing like better than a public hearing. Okay. No, I think that for me, the takeaway is that we have a beautiful spot. I mean, here we go, Uncle Eddie. But I remember a few years back, some friends of mine from Northern Alberta came down and stayed at one of the rundown old resorts that looked like they should have a 58 Chevy out front. And they were absolutely blown away by the vista, by the coast mountains and the beach and the ocean. And all of a sudden I saw it through their eyes, you know. And you seldom do that when you live in such a beautiful piece of paradise that we have. Sometimes you get used to it and you get normalized to it. And you go, oh yeah, that's the coast mountains, you know. But it was amazing. So you realize, you know, what you have, and the people there do realize that. And I think we recognize that at no point in time were anybody even suggesting to build, you know, 8-story apartments on the foreshore and all that nonsense. That wasn't even, somebody dreamt that up in a conspiracy lab somewhere and put it on the internet. I have no idea. So, you know, I think what we're going to see is slow growth. Some kind of growth is inevitable, but obviously we're always restrained by our servicing. Number one being water, and number two being sanitary. So, you know, I see it growing. I think the forming character has to be maintained. At no point in time was anybody suggesting that would disappear. So, but there again, myself, this is Uncle Eddie talking, and I've only got a couple more months of this and I'll be gone. But I do think that there is huge potential down there to grow into the times. And, you know, obviously growth is what happens while you're busy making other plans. Okay, so we ready for the roll call here? We are on receipt. You're going to call a question on receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. And the recommendation attached?
I'll move it.
Sorry?
I'll move.
We have to do it at this point? Oh, the blank space. Who's going to fill in the blank space and that Director X be appointed chair?
Yeah, I'll appoint Dr. Grieve as chair of the, and Dr. Hardy as second vice chair for the public hearing.
Okay.
Second.
You're going to pay for that one day. Okay, so that's part of the recommendation then. So we've got the recommendation before us with the chair and the vice chair for the public hearing. And I'm going to call the question. Anybody opposed? And that carries. Seeing the time, I would suggest we go get a working lunch. Or is that okay? Just see nobody's in the gallery we need to accommodate at this point. Just Bruce, and he can wait. So we're going to call a quick recess for lunch and come right back about 15 minutes. Thank you. The I'm going to reconvene the Electoral Area Services Committee meeting. And we are on number 9, Fire and Rescue Services. Aren't we? Where are we at? We're going to do number 1. Yeah, we skipped over number 1. So we're going to go all the way back to number 1 and get that over with.
Move receipt.
So moving second on 1. Any discussion on 1? Anybody opposed to 1? That carries. Now back to 8. And here we are. So a report from July 9th regarding proposed next steps for the Royston Seaside Trail. Long River Drive for receipt. Moving second on receipt and over to staff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Robin Holm, our Manager of Long Range Planning and Sustainability, will be introducing this report, and Mark Harrison, Manager of Parks, is supporting the conversation. So, Robin, over to you.
Good afternoon. Through the CEO and the chair to the directors. Today, I will be presenting the proposed next steps for the Royston Seaside Trail viewing platform. Just moving to the, oh, thanks, Lisa. So just to provide a bit of background on how we got here, last September, the board directed staff to remove the existing viewing platform because it had reached the end of its life cycle and was no longer safe. And as well, staff were directed to begin planning for its replacement. In March, we took that conversation to the community through an open house in Royston, and the viewing platform was one of the 3 electoral area A projects that we were looking for feedback on. Then in May, we came back with a what we heard summary where we shared the feedback we received and outlined some preliminary next steps. And based on the board's direction and the community feedback we received, staff have developed a proposed approach for moving the project forward. So staff are recommending an approach modeled after the recently completed Kapoje Park, formerly known as Dyke Park, which many of you will be familiar with following its reopening last week. We are recommending a phased approach with long-range planning and sustainability leading the early planning, engagement, and concept development work, with parks leading the detailed design and construction phases. An important part of this approach is establishing a project advisory committee early in the process. It gives us the opportunity to co-develop the project with Comox First Nation, community members, and project partners from the outset. We found this to be one of the real strengths of the Kapoje Park project. And as the project moves into the design stage, that committee would transition into more of a technical advisory committee, bringing in the partners and the technical expertise needed to support the detailed design work. Using this approach allows us to think beyond replacing the viewing platform. And as we saw at Kapoje Park, there are opportunities to deliver a number of additional benefits through this design process, including improved coastal resilience, reduced erosion risk, and enhanced habitat and biodiversity, and recognition and celebration of Comox First Nation cultural heritage, and as well a better experience for people using the park. Phase 1 is really focused on the planning and project initiation work. The key activities include confirming the project scope, identifying project partners, establishing the project advisory committee, preparing RFPs for the technical work, and developing a project charter. As well, we'll be undertaking a funding scan to identify any funding grant opportunities. And the goal is to complete this foundational work before moving on to the detailed design work. From a budget perspective, parks have already allocated $80,000 to the project through the 2026-2030 financial planning process, with approximately $73,000 remaining. That provides a good starting point for the early phases of the project, and we do expect design phase to exceed that amount. So one of the first priorities will be pursuing that grant funding, as mentioned earlier. At this stage, it's still too early to estimate the overall project costs, as that will depend on the final scope and design. But based on our experience with similar projects, archaeology and design are expected to be the largest pre-construction costs. Should additional funding from the CBRD be required, staff would bring forward a budget amendment for the committee and board's consideration. And so finally, the recommendation before you today is to begin phase 1 of the project. This will allow staff to start the planning and engagement work, pursue grant funding, and work with project partners to develop the information needed before bringing future phases of the project back to the committee for consideration. Taking a phased approach allows us flexibility. As we refine the project scope and better understand available funding, we can adjust the project before moving into the detailed design and construction. With that, Mark and I are available for any questions.
Thank you very much for that. Any comments? Dr. Hardy?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. And just a question for staff and Director Harbour, I guess with regards to this process that's going to get undertaken in Royston, just fall under Area A's park service or B and C's park service? Or are we jointly working together on this process? Like, I'm just trying to understand, based upon some of the decisions that we've made in the last couple of months, how is this process proceeding with regards to park dollars? Thanks.
So, Mr. Chair, currently the ABC Park Service 621 is the service under which this work would be undertaken. Should the service structure change, which is still the subject of discussion amongst the board, should the service structure change, then it would have to be decided upon at that time whether it is undertaken through a new Area A only service or otherwise. But at this time, it's under the ABC Park Service. And those other discussions, they are in closed session, pending the release of any information around service fees.
Any other comments? Questions? Director Harbour?
Yeah, thanks. I'm good with proceeding with the initial phase. I know I put a pause on the Craig Darroch project for now for the playground, pending resetting of priorities after the election. But for this one, there's a lot of support in Royston for finding the next iteration of the amenities there. And I know there's other parks priority in Area A that are identified, but I think that to do that that first phase and see where we land would be valuable, because we've been sort of as a standstill for this initiative for some time. So I think it'll be good to start considering a direction for it. So I'm supportive of the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Chair, I was a bit remiss there. Staff just reminded me that this is one of those projects that falls under a couple of services, much like the Kapoja Park redesign was also under a couple different services. So the planning side of the project is under the Rural Community Planning Service 500. And when we get to the design implementation phase, that's where it'll be more centered under the parks umbrella. Though, of course, Mark and Robin are both supporting the work all the way through.
Dr. Harbour?
Yeah, thanks. And I would also highlight that I think people have heard me speak a lot over the years without, providing ultimate direction on this. But for us to connect the Riverside Trail to the Royston Trail is also another priority. But the reason why I bring that up is that consideration could actually impact the design of this project as well, considering a potential future kind of broader regional connection. So I would just highlight that as well. And so in a way, hearing James talk about it, it makes sense that planning is involved in this as well.
Okay, so we're on receipt. I'm going to call a question on receipt. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. And there's a recommendation attached.
So moved.
I'll second it. Any more discussion on the recommendation? In that case, I'll call it. Anybody opposed? It also carries. Thank you. And now, report from June 30th regarding the extension of the current fire and rescue service mutual aid agreements. Tracy. Seconded.
Thank you, Chair. Bruce Green, our Regional Rural Fire Chief, will be introducing this report. Bruce, over to you.
Thanks, James, to the CEO, to the chair and the directors. We do currently have a mutual aid agreement that includes Deep Bay, Ships Point, and the CBRD, mainly Fanny Bay, Union Bay. That contract has expired, but it is going month to month. I've reached out with Ships Point and Deep Bay. They are both in favor of continuing the contract as is, or the agreement. The only change I've made is we do have a valley-wide mutual aid agreement, and I've made the language in this mutual aid agreement the same as the language. So they're two separate agreements, but the agreements are identical, the same, just that people are different within those agreements. So with that, I open up to any questions.
Any questions, Director Arbor?
No, none. Sorry, if you can hear me.
Okay. Sounds good. On receipt of report. Anybody opposed? Carries. And recommendation. Second. More questions? So call a question on the recommendation. Anyone opposed? That also carries. Rural Community Grant one-time grant considerations. Report from July 9th regarding additional rural community grant applications for receipt. Second. And over to staff.
Thanks, Chair. Over to Doug DeMarzo, General Manager of Community Services, to be introducing this report. Doug, over to you.
It's been a while. Good afternoon, through the chair. I'm here to present the rural community grant applications. This is more or less what we're suggesting as the last intake for this year. It's outside of our previous intake that was adjudicated earlier this year. So we have two grant submissions, one from the Oyster River Enhancement Society for roof repairs, and another that was moved forward from Rec Grant to this from the Mount Washington Freestyle Club for some foundation work to ski jumps, etc. So with these two, in years past, we've brought up a full table where you see your dollars kind of go and plus and minus through this. But given your funds available there at the bottom, we figured we could just do it off of this table here. It's a total ask of $45,000, and you'll see Area A, Bay and Sound, has $308 left. Area B has $15,924. Area C has $3,980. Denman has 101 and Hornby has 182. So not a lot of funds to look at here, but still important to complete our process by bringing this grant forward request in July. So at your discretion, we usually open up a conversation here led by the chair to go through each application. I would suggest you go through Oyster River Enhancement first, and just as a way of an update, they are pretty much completed their project for the roof, and it was done out of operational funding. So they're looking to put that funding back into their operational funds, just because of the timing and the necessity of getting this work done early on. They went ahead with the project. And Mount Washington Freestyle Club is still interested in this project as this is becoming more and more important as there's less and less snow. So it's about building those foundations, which also they wanted me to remind you that it also is about climate change in the sense that it keeps people from having to leave the island on a regular basis due to lack of snow to continue with their training and things as they get to higher levels. So there's a number of pieces in both these that I'd be happy to answer a few more questions about if you have them. But otherwise, I'll hand it back to you, Chair, to adjudicate the process here.
So my question is, looks like the covers are almost bare. So do we borrow against 2027s? Or how do we How do you make up the difference?
I'll pass that over to finance. In years past, we've never been at a situation where we've had to make up the difference.
I've never
Ask
seen
that
area
question,
C so broke in my life.
Yeah, maybe.
Usually we have 39,000, not 3,900.
Finance has any suggestions around that? Yeah, I'm not aware of how, if you can borrow against future years.
Yeah, I think Lucy Wicharik's come to the microphone here to support the discussion. It's not a recommended practice at all to be borrowing against future years. This was a budgeted amount that that you had, and it was expended for the most part earlier in the year. And it may be that these one-time grant considerations cannot be considered in full.
Okay.
Lucy, if you had anything else to add, I think that would be our recommendation, is that they cannot be considered in full.
I don't have anything else to add. We don't normally borrow for this or overextend it.
Don't we have a little sack of money somewhere in your drawer? We can just put an IOU on it. Okay. So basically, we're left with what, about 20 grand? Rough and ready. I don't know how the other directors feel. Hornby's down to $182. Them is 101. Baines is 308. What be the will of the committee? Would you want to just take that and put it in one basket and divide it by two? Because, you know, all in reality, through different services, of course, we are rebuilding the bridge to the Oyster River Salmon Enhancement Facility, which is costing, what, 150,000, I think, down from what it was. But so, you know, in reality, it's considerable contribution to the hatchery.
Yeah, I'm good with that suggestion.
What, to add it up and divide it by two?
Yep.
Okay. What about our director from Area B? And you got the lion's share this time, Richard. Or we can keep it in reserve for something else. But anything coming now will be referred forward to 2007. Correct?
Yes, correct.
So this is the last of it. I made a suggestion. Okay, I put it forward and Director Arbor seconded, then that's fair. Is that close enough? We're just on receipt, right? So let's dispense with receipt then first. Anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. Now, if you want me to make a motion, I would suggest that we pool our funds. And I think we have the wherewithal to give pretty close to $10,000 to each group. What is the actual figure, Lucy?
It's 25,000. Oh, actually,
Pardon?
25,000 for Oyster River, and then Mount Washington Freestyle's 20, and then Lucy's.
The total in the kitty is what? Get out my phone and add it up. This is okay to do, yeah.
Is it? Yes, it's okay to actually allocate it out in the way that you're suggesting. And if you're splitting it in half, I get $10,247.50 for both.
So it's first and seconded. Any more discussion? Call the question. Is anybody opposed to that? So it carries. Thank you very much, directors. Okay, so we're now on the Graham Lake petition outcome. Yahoo! Report for receipt regarding the outcome of the petition process conducted securing borrowing funding for Graham Lake Water Service. And a motion on receipt?
Ian said motion, I said second.
You did, okay. We're good. And over to Kaylee.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Kaylee Lemaire, our water wastewater analyst, will be introducing this report. Kaylee, over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon through the CEO to the chair and directors. This report provides an update on the outcome of the boring petition process to secure the remaining funding for the Graham Lake Treatment Plant project. Upon initiating the petition in May, staff mailed each owner of their property within the service petition form and a cover letter. Staff received questions and concerns from the residents via email, a written letter, and over the phone, and updated the project website according to respond to questions. Some questions that were raised related to the proposed rate increases, consequences of a failed petition process, location and size of the new treatment-related structures, why point of entry treatment was not an option, and how waste from the treatment plant might be managed. As of the deadline, 66 completed petition forms with a combined assessed value of $63 million have been returned. As this represents 72% of the issued petition forms, it is well above the legislated 50% threshold required, and the loan authorization bylaw may be considered by the board for 3 readings. Unfortunately, on July 7th, the CVRD received a letter from the UBCM also informing us that the Graham Lake SPF grant was not among the successful 55 projects of the 242 applications made to that program. While this is unfortunate, staff will continue to look for additional funding opportunities to increase affordability. As detailed in the March report, the project cost has increased to 4.4 million, and a budget amendment of 170,000 is required to reflect that, which staff recommend to be funded through the proposed long-term debt. Next steps. So given the tight project timeline, staff have reached out to grant program staff regarding the grant deadline extension request and application for a significant change to the grant agreement to reflect the change in treatment technology. Once the certainty of the grant deadline and significant changes known, we'll quickly move to procurement of the design engineering firm. As the design progresses and the costs become better defined, staff will continue to review the scope and budget to deliver a successful project. That's all from me, but open to questions.
Any questions? Any comments? I guess we can say hurrah to the director for all his hard work, knocking on doors. Director Arbor, you want to elaborate?
No, thanks. Yeah, it's good to see the outcome. And just for staff, there was remaining questions around the confidence in the overall budget amount right up until the deadline, both for people who voted in favor and who did not vote at all. So can we just get on the record here what is the sense of staff on the veracity of the $4.4 million figure? Some people are like, well, it looks like it might be 4 years old. Like, I know that's not the case, but if you can explain that and get that on the record, I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, and we escalated it. You know, we didn't have we escalated the cost estimate that we received with kind of I believe it was I looked at multiple indices to kind of confirm that you know we were comfortable with these numbers. But as we kind of move forward, we'll continue to kind of make sure that we're on target. I don't know if that answers. Do you have anything else to say, Chris?
Thanks through the chair. Thanks, Kaylee. Just to reiterate, yeah, while the cost estimate is several years old, we worked following standard internal practice to escalate that to the anticipated midpoint of construction. So we're confident in the numbers used to support that petition process.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess my comment to people back is people have been used to seeing like way over budget projects, infrastructure in the past, but I have mentioned to residents that, for example, the Union Bay Fire Hall, even the Hornby boat ramp, like we're starting to see a softening a little bit in the market. So for the last 3 or 4 years, everyone felt like every budget was not holding, but I guess what you're saying is you have built that in, what the inflation has been, and that's what that number is based on. So it's good to hear. And yeah, it's going to be, thanks for Kaylee for all his work on this file. I've heard a lot of positive things about staff's interaction with different homeowners, and I really want to give kudos to our staff for their perseverance on this very tough file.
Thank you.
And our hands are tied. So I think it's a discussion that needs to be repeatedly brought forward to senior government because they're obviously tone deaf to this. So on receipt, call the question. No one opposed? Anybody opposed? That carries. And the recommendation as well.
So moved.
Okay, on the recommendation, same thing. Anybody opposed? That carries. Number 12, decarbonization and energy reduction strategy update report from July 8th.
Move receipt.
Second.
Moved and second on receipt. Over to staff for introductions.
Thank you, Chair. Daryl Warnock, our water wastewater analyst, will be introducing this report. Daryl is supported at the table by Chris LaRose, General Manager of Engineering Services. So Daryl, over to you.
There you go, Daryl. Fire away.
Caught me off. Thanks, James. Good afternoon, everyone. So I'll stress that this report is for information only, and I'm just here to provide an update on our decarbonization and energy reduction strategy. This originated back in 2019 when the board adopted the corporate emissions and energy policy, which stated that the CVRD would reduce their greenhouse gas emissions by 50% by 2030, and that each department within the CVRD would be responsible for meeting the SEEP goals. The Water and Wastewater Department started this process by complete the integrated energy audits in 2024. This is a requirement so that we could apply to BC Hydro for funding for feasibility studies. But staff felt there's an opportunity before we applied for funding to expand the analysis. And that's what initiated the decarbonization energy reduction strategy. The integrated energy audits only looked at 3 sites: the wastewater treatment plant, the water treatment plant, and the compost site, where the objective of the decarbonization energy reduction strategy was to look at all sites within the CVRD's water and wastewater departments. And this included sites within the electoral areas, including Union Bay and the Black Creek, Oyster Bay water treatment plants. We retained Energy Revolution Services to complete an audit on all the sites, and they compiled a list of all possible initiatives, or what are colloquially called the energy conservation measures. And once we'd compiled that list, we prioritized them on greenhouse gas emissions and their return on investments. Once we evaluated these ECMs, we applied to BC Hydro to fund 2 feasibility studies. One, a multi-site study, including both water and wastewater locations for solar and battery options. And the second, an electrification study for the heating system at the wastewater plant. So I will note, within the solar study, the Union Bay water treatment was included for an array there. BC Hydro approved to fund both the feasibility studies, 100% for the solar, up to 100% for the solar and battery study, and 50% for the electrification of the heating system at the wastewater plant. The feasibility studies were completed and submitted to BC Hydro in December. And since then, BC Hydro has communicated to the CVRD staff that incentives are potentially available. So since then, we have given them a list of initiatives and ECMs that we would like to pursue funding for, and we're just waiting to start that process with them. Just to highlight some of the projects that we've would like to receive funding for would be a solar array at the water treatment plant and a battery solution there as well, along with a battery solution at the raw water pump station. My last final note is, due to site conditions and the orientation of solar, we did not proceed with a solar array at the Union Bay water treatment plant. And that concludes my presentation.
Thanks very much. Any questions or comments from the directors? Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. I realize there's no decisions for today, but I just want to show my support for this work. And when it comes to making budgetary decisions, I'll likely be in favor. A lot of them are actually improving efficiency and at the same time as reducing our carbon footprint. So I think makes for easy decision making when reports like that are brought forward. Thanks.
So we're on receipt, and I'm going to call a question on receipt. Anybody opposed? That carries. Thanks so much. Now, the water restrictions dashboard, July 6th edition. And Crystal Rose.
Thanks, and through the chair. So this is our latest monthly dashboard reporting out on our water supply snapshot for each of our water service areas. So focusing on the services that fall within the mandate of this committee. For Royston Water System shifted to stage 3 on July 10th, last Friday, just following the lead of the Village of Cumberland, who provides the water for that system. Union Bay is still on stage 2, just following the bylaw that we inherited when we took over the Union Bay Improvement District, which ties the shift of stages to the level of water in the lake. And Graham Lake doesn't currently have doesn't yet have a water conservation bylaw, so no stages are in place there. Actually, that's a typo. It says stage 1, but we don't have stage water restrictions yet, although we do plan to roll one out as we after we shift our focus from the water treatment project. And just more generally, while we have seen some rain over the past weeks, which has been very welcome indeed, we're still very much in drought conditions, and we expect the rain to dry up over the coming weeks. So we'll be watching the conditions carefully and looking at the second page, looking at the consumption year over year compared to prior years, definitely reflect the very dry nature of this year, and we'll continue to observe the conditions moving forward. And finally, the Comox Valley Water System, which part overlaps with the electoral areas. We are now in stage 3. And BC Hydro, just learned from BC Hydro that they've made one small further reduction in flow down the Punnage River, but don't have any further plans to reduce flows in the foreseeable future. So that's all from me, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
So directors, any observations? Director Arbor.
Yeah, thanks. And in a way, it's good there was that typo there about Graham Lake, because that was definitely another topic about water meters potentially coming out of the project, as well as a better understanding. Like, we started on the hydrology of the lake, but I guess we'll probably work to refine that understanding and what that could look like in regards to stages. Is that correct, Chris? And in your comment, you said after the water treatment plant, but is completed, but do you see some of that work being initiated prior to?
Yeah, through the chair, what I meant was after we've shifted our focus from delivery of that project, so not waiting until after. You're absolutely right. We would like to have something in place before then. And as you've noted, there is plans to install meters in that service, which will help kind of go part and parcel with implementation of a bylaw. So don't have a specific timeline for you now, but definitely prior to completion of that project. So I would expect that we could be bringing something forward in 2027 would be my current estimate.
Thanks for that clarification.
Water everywhere. Any comments? We're good. All right, so for receipt, On receipt. Anybody opposed? It carries. Union Bay Fire Hall dashboard. Lots of dashboards today.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Bruce Green is going to introduce both this dashboard and the dashboard for the Mount Washington Fire Hall project. It's our attempt at coming to the Electoral Area Services Committee on a regular basis to identify where the projects are at, how well they're progressing or not, and keep the committee informed as to those projects. So thanks to the staff for pulling this together. I think it's an important way to provide some updated information to the directors and to the public. So Bruce.
Great.
Thank you, James, through the CEO to the chair and the directors. So first up, the Union Bay Fire Protection Fire Hall. Things are moving along well. I mean, we were slowed down for a little bit. There was some issues with truss heights and making sure there was enough room for the bay doors to open the trusses. That took a little bit to solve, and I believe they solved that now. So the framing should be picking up. They installed the sewer septic tanks have been installed. They're also doing the electrical and all that inside of the training area now. We're still on budget. I'm happy to announce that Modi came through and we do have a permit to paint lines on the road. And that did come once we worked with our contractor that done. The cost for that with us is an added $10,000, which was a pleasant surprise to us. We were expecting more. So with that, if we can throw in one of the pictures, there's an I-beam there. And that's where the trade truck is going to be. Keep going. Keep going. Okay, that area there. That's going to be the parade truck. And in our original plans, there was a boardroom, meeting room up above that we had taken off to save money. We are in a place that the budget is doing quite well. So we've made the decision that now is the time to add to the fire hall, not after the fact. So we're working with a contract to add, we called it a boardroom above that truck, and it's going to cost us about an extra $100,000 to do that, which I was shocked at. But when you talk to the contractors and the people managing it for us, that's an acceptable cost. And I think it's prudent on us to, if we have the budget now, to make the space available, because as we find space becomes unavailable readily quick and it's more expensive to do it in the future. So we're moving forward with doing that. And then the other one we're looking at is a solar panel array. But when talking to Michael Bernard and the intricacies, he's waiting to hold off until the project's done. And then we'll see where we go with that one. And right now we're at a surplus of $800,000. That's not including the $100,000 that we have to. So it'll be about $700,000 that we're doing all right with. So with that, I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you, Chief. And Director Arbor has a question.
Yeah, that's great report, obviously. And every time I drive by it, it seems to be such a well-managed project and efficient and tidy as well. So let's kudos to the general contractor and all the subs. It's really, yeah, it's really heartening to see how the fire hall is coming together in Union Bay. Also, of course, great to hear that with some savings here and there, we're able to add that boardroom. And I would say I would really welcome the solar panel array. It's actually, we just had a presentation just now on the water treatment plant and, you know, possible directions that way. And it's been on my mind as well for other facilities at the CVRD. I'm not sure if we ever did one on Hornby, but sometimes when you don't do them, you know, it's interesting how decades can go by or a decade or many years. So if there's room in the budget to consider a project like that, I realize it's probably has an impact mostly on the electrical configuration and stuff like that. So I'll leave it in your capable hands, but I just want to show that support. Thank you.
So just to add to that, we have been planning solar all along. We've made the additions to the electrical room for solar that's in there. Talking with Michael, who's a solar guy for the CVRD, Mike Bernard, he feels it'd be in our best interest that when we have budget savings, we just carry that forward and do the solar after the project's concluded instead of doing it with it. It's just becoming way too complicated to do it with the project. So there is the plans. We're just waiting to go there.
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, it's on receipt. Anyone opposed receipt? That carries. Now the Mount Washington Fire Service Building dashboard. Back over to Bruce.
So once again, through the chair, or through James, the chair, and then the directors, this one is finally moving along. It's taken us some time to get here. We are going, this one, the budget is a lot tighter. Our surplus, we don't have as much surplus as Union Bay. Like I think we're at a $40,000 surplus right now, which is really tight. But we're managing it the best we can, but just it is the project costs escalated for moving rocks and stuff out of the ground. Like they started clearing land and they found a rock that was 3 meters long by this that they had to get out. So there is some challenges with building on the mountain with that. We seem to be overcoming that. We got our building permit issued the other day, so we're ready to move forward with this. And we have a kickoff meeting tomorrow to keep moving this project along. It seems to be going well. It's just this one is, and we did the professional management fees. This is the first project with a CBRD to use I might get it wrong, in CCC DC B5 or something like that, where we have a project manager for this. We're trying this out and it seems to be working well for us. And with a prefab building, everybody believes it's the best way to go, because if there's a bolt out of place, it would become my problem. Well, now it's their problem to manage an intricate building like that. And I believe that's the way Courtney's going with their new fire hall as well. So it's a new way of doing business with the CBRD. So we'll see how that works out. But the biggest one for this one is we are tight on budget.
Good news. So are we going to be slamming drywall in November, or?
Hopefully we'll be opening it in November.
There you go. And there's the excavator that found the boulder.
That is the excavator that found the boulder.
That's a good one. Okay, that's absolutely fantastic. On receipt again, anybody opposed again? That carries. And we have new business, Community Works Fund for the Solom River Crossing. Correspondence by Director Gree requesting an unallocated electoral area C Community Works funds to partially address the shortfall of construction of pedestrian bridge over the Solom River for receipt. Move a second on receipt. And anybody speaking to this one? Or is it pretty straightforward? We're on. I think we're waiting for approval still from the ALC for the bridge crossing. It's been a long time coming, and a lot of hard work's gone into it. So we're just going to keep our fingers crossed. But when we do get the go ahead, we'll have some money to add to the kitty. So we'll make sure we get Mayor Wells to come and cross our bridge when it's time. Okay, so on receipt, any discussion? Okay, on receipt, anybody opposed? That carries. And the requested action? I shouldn't move it myself, should I?
I'll move it.
There you go. I'll second it. Anybody opposed to that? Then that carries as well. Thanks a lot. Gents. Addendum upon approval of the committee. Comments regarding temporary use permit application TUP 1A26. Is that? No, that's not. Pardon? Okay, we're going to have to receive this correspondence. We've already dealt with the item. So move receipt of correspondence.
Yeah, I'll move it.
I'll second it. We missed it. And anybody opposed to receipt? That carries. Okay, now we're going to have a closed meeting. Pursuant to following subsections F, I, K, and 92B3. So a motion to go into camera.
Yeah, I'll move.
And I'll second.